happen there. One, you have Ryan Atkins doing what he does, which is that slow grind to climb himself back into a race, never going out too hot. But Brett Hall's still being in the top five after doing burpees or taking a penalty at Olympus, that is. That goes to tell you just how strong those lead men have been climbing compared to the rest of the field. Because right now you're getting a view of what looks to be Josiah Middow flying downhill right behind Rylan Shadeg.
Now, typically, I like to see it. You see Josiah Middow. He tends to lead these mountain races early on, or likes to lead these mountain races early on. And then sometimes he starts to drift back just a little towards the end, right? We have our heavy closers, our VJs, our Atkins, our Rylans, and somehow he ends up getting nipped towards the end. I actually feel like that version of it based on past experiences and some recent lessons learned on how to truly race a Spartan mountain race properly. And then you have Rylan Shadeg, who he's following very closely behind, who I would say is actually going out harder than I expected him to, because Rylan is traditionally known as a closer. At least he's built up that sort of facade. So anyway, I just think it's an interesting combo. I think we have like a Josiah who's holding back, and then we have a Rylan who's being more aggressive, yet they're both right next to each other on the mountain. What do you think about their positioning, Bracken?
Well, it is very interesting, and we saw Rylan blow right around him as they started descending, but Josiah's not going anywhere. And you know me, I always look into what athletes are doing, what they're wearing, and historically, Josiah races in either Salomon's soft ground pros, or he races in the Hoka Evo Jaws, which are both aggressive stripped down racers. Today, he's in the Tecton X from Hoka, which is a beefier cushion shoe, which tells me he's not prioritizing speed on this course. He's playing the long game. And that plays right into what you're saying, Kirk, which is he's not looking to rip up the first climb and descent. He's looking to rip up the final climb and descent.
And Bracken, I would add that you're spot on with that. When you look at the actual descents on this course, they're long, but they can also be steep. And I recall the course here a couple years ago where the descent, one of the final descents was somewhere in the 1.5 mile long range. And what I noticed from my body running the course was that my quads were giving out towards the end of that descent. Because you're having this massive effort, high impact. You either have to be able to continue to allow the feet to turn over on these descents and not break at all, or if you're breaking in any way, as you see Emma Cook-Clark go by, very happy. If you're breaking at all, your quads are firing tremendously hard on that descent, and at some point, they may give out. Either way, the bottoms of your feet are taking a beating because it's rocky and rubbly on the way down some of these climbs.
Yeah, they're descending really steep stuff right now on the women's side, and the men are getting that rolling smooth terrain. But they're taking a long descent to the bottom. Then they have a bigger climb, and then we get to what you were talking about. They descend from mile 5.5 to 7, climb back all the way up, and then from mile 10 to the finish, they're descending again. Now that one's a little more broken. So they have a 1.5 mile descent and a broken 2.5 mile descent, which means you can't overplay those cards early.
Descent, no, that 1.5 mile descent, we're looking at a very steep, painful descent. The kind of descent that you might get more in like a Big Bear, but more rubble involved. And then as far as those other descents, it may be a little bit stretched out and winding. And of course, having those kickers in the middle to break them up allows you to let those quads and the bottoms of those feet get a reprieve. But again, those cushion shoes you mentioned going to play a huge role here today. Kirk, again, you've raced on this course. What are your thoughts looking at this one?
Yeah, speaking of steep, fellas, that may be the first time I had seen Rhea Kopel power hiking up a mountain.
Go,
I don't know if you caught that previous shot, but you know it's steep when Rhea Kopel is power hiking, because that girl can run up mountains. So just as we were about the terrain being steep, if Rhea Kopel is power hiking, folks, it's steep as heck. You can rest assured that is some grade that some of you might be on your hands and knees for.
And we right now have a 3-woman battle for a podium position.
Josiah just crashed.
This is the competition for... What was that, Bracken? Did you say Josiah crashed?
Yeah, he
go,
just
Rose.
wiped out on
That
coming
hole.
around the corner on a descent, and
There you
Rylan
go.
is completely off screen, out of
That
sight.
bell. You can get that bell from right there. There it is.
Now, for those of you wondering, because it's not on
Come
screen
on,
right
girls.
now,
You're right there.
Josiah
Nice
Midow
work.
did
Way
have a
up.
crash, but he is back up and running. He's not injured. He's not out of it. He's still moving strong. As Rhea Coble now coming out ahead in that group of three. But up in front of them, Chris Rogloski still in second position as far as we're aware, with Emma Cook-Clark way out in the lead for the women's race.
Traditionally, I feel like the women's race opens up earlier, especially in these big mountain races, right? We see these larger gaps form. And let's be honest, like if we were going to call our shots, we would have guessed that Emma Cook-Clark was going to be way out front, even already, right? She's smiling, laughing, having a
Absolutely.
good time, and still just laying it down. However, you see how tight this pack of women is? Like we have our main players all sort of already mixing it up. And if they have any chance of keeping Emma Cook-Clark somewhat in sight, they need to kind of battle each other along, right? So that they can keep the intensity up early and maybe just maybe have like sort of a fool's hope of reeling in Emma at some point. But I like the fact that we have this group of women working together right now. That's going to pay dividends possibly later as far as closing that gap between them and Emma.
And Kirk, I would say that when we talk about working together and people maybe don't have the experience or the knowledge to know like the difference between three athletes who are actually trying to help each other along and keep each other pushed versus three athletes throwing attacks at one another, trying to break each other on the course. That's a good way to fall out of contention for the higher podium spots and a good way to blow up. But instead, trying to hold a tempo, drafting on each other, working together without throwing aggressive attacks is a very different way of going about group running.
Well, Bracken, you know this. Like, not only are they like trying to keep, let's say first place in sight, but these women also have to think about the ladies following behind them. And some of those women behind these ladies we see here grouped up are going to be caught in no woman's land, meaning like they got they can see in front of them, they got nobody they can see behind them, and so it's easy to just slightly back off the throttle, and maybe that'll pay off later in this race. But I just like that we sort of see this clumping of ladies who are working together, which not only, again, keeps that gap tight up front, but also maybe puts a little more on from the women behind them. I don't know. How do you see that playing out, Bracken? Do you see it's being too early in this race for that to make a difference? Or could this, in fact, maybe even be hurting them if they're pushing each other a little early?
I mean, it certainly could be because you get pushed outside of your comfort zone just slightly, and that's all it takes at altitude. You know as well as I, if you tip slightly at altitude, you tip. At sea level, you can rein it back in. It's really hard to get it back together. But at the same time, if you are out in front and you are in first, or let's say like Chris is, and you're in second, but you've been gapped by first, the last thing you want is a group of people working to catch you. You want a single chaser. You do not want a peloton.
Well, speaking of a little bit of race competition out there on the course, Jack Bauer, we have an update from the stats man himself out on the course. Jack, are you with us?
Yes, can you hear me, David? All right.
Yeah.
So right now, Chris Rogloski actually dropped from second to fifth after going out really fast. Emma, commanding lead. She was chatting, talking the whole time up there. It's like she's on a fun run. It's insane how comfortable she's looking out there. Passed a ton of the guys within the first mile and a half, so she's in cruise control right now. It looked like Rose and Rhea were just behind her, and Jamie Bruce in fourth place. So she's the big surprise at this moment. Fantastic mountain runner, but she's probably the surprise. Alex Walker in sixth or fifth, and then Casey Monroe just after her. But Emma commanding lead, and they're going downhill right now. We're going to catch them on the uphill in a little bit.
Well, thanks a lot, Jack. And I was thinking that looked like Jamie Bruce, but I was surprised to see her mixing it up that far up in the field with the names of the ladies that she was with Rose Wetzel and with Rhea Coble. But we've seen Jamie have strong performances at courses even like Killington in the past. So we know she has the ability to climb, but this is her, in some ways, punching a little bit above her weight class, and it would be an amazing thing to see her do this the entire length of the race.
You know what? She's going to. because what she's showing right now is that she is a class above the women around her on the descents. And we know very well that it doesn't matter how hard you work an uphill if they can gobble you right up on the down. And you saw the difference between her and Rhea. Rhea has that all day, all night type of descending ability. She is never outside her comfort zone. She is always compact. But Jamie opens up her hips like we see Ryan Atkins doing on screen from time to time here. A little bit like we've seen Rylan or even a Johnny do in the past, where she gets some extension and a little bit of arm flailing going to keep her upright that you don't see from someone like Rose or Rhea. And so no matter what they do on obstacles, she's going to downhill herself back into this race all day long.
Let's go, girls.
And Rose Wetzel also does want to run that downhill hard, but you can see she's got that slight strategic position in front of Brusa, and she's preventing her from fully opening up because Brusa wants to get by, but she can't run that full speed she wants because it's only a single track. It's a tough place to pass. So Rose is mitigating a little bit of that damage right now, but they are gapping Koval by quite a bit.
Yeah, Jack alluded to the fact that Emma Cook Clark very out of breath, which is dangerous for the rest of the field. But I'm more surprised that Jack wasn't more out of breath. I don't know about you guys, but he's got a tall order hanging up there up front with the ladies. So Jack, good job, man. I'm impressed that your fitness is holding up with some of these ladies. Now, what do we see here, David or Bracken? Actually, Bracken, since you got a course. So these ladies are going to descend, right? Taking their first big descent here. And then what are we seeing at the bottom? Typically, there's a gauntlet of sorts at the bottom. What are they coming up on?
There actually is no gauntlet. They come down to a wall and immediately start up with like almost a 2-mile climb. If I'm reading this map correctly, because that sounds crazy to even say out loud that we're hitting a 2-mile climb, but this is the big climb right here. So in my opinion, they get to the bottom, they clear a wall, and the race begins. Everything up until here has just been a preamble. This is foreplay. It's about to get real. You've maybe trashed your legs more than you thought you were going to. Maybe this is good news for Jamie that she can't pass quite yet because she's not allowed to hammer yet because she still has 2 monster climbs. So we would expect, usually you would come down and do a bunch of obstacles in front of an audience. You stop just short of the festival grounds and go back up right away.
I also want to point out something else Jack said, which was that Chris Berglowski went out too fast on the first climb. I think she felt this need to establish herself. I am this upper echelon athlete. Look at all these things I've accomplished this year. And there is some level of that expectation. Like maybe I need to go out and, set my, stamp my mark on this race early. And on a course like this, you can pay the price early or you can pay the price late. And maybe she has a second wind in her, but she's already dropped to 5th position, which was unexpected. Speaking of Jack, we have Jack out there with another update, I believe, on the women's race. Jack, take it away.
Look at how steep it is. It's so difficult to tell on camera. This is probably 40 to 45% grade. You've got all that high brush that people have to walk through. These are some of the ultra people coming through, but this is going to be a 10-15 minute climb for the top athletes coming up here. It's so hard to tell on camera, but I can assure you this is probably the steepest part of the course that they've hit so far. That's it.
Thanks, Jack. If this was the same climb as last year, that grass will all be pounded into dirt by the time this thing's over. There'll be so many people tracking over it. But it is a miserable, he's right, about 10 to 15 minute climb. It's the earth kind of gives way beneath you on that climb a little bit. You lose some of that climbing power. And so it just kind of drags on. And once you reach the peak of it, you still have more running to do up some trails as well. It's not the top. It's just the top of about a half-mile worth of very steep climbing. As we're looking at Olympus right now, the Tyrolean Traverse right now, and that's Hawk Call still out in the front, but being chased hard by, looks like Josiah Middow.
If that's the case, something happened here. If that's truly Hawk in front, and I'm not convinced that's Hawk. because those shorts looked a little bit long for what Hawk's wearing. So I believe Hawk's still free and clear. But I do want to take a second and shout out two things. First of all, let's get some ultra love out here. This course, it historically has been a massive DNF monster for the ultra crowd, and it's going to be every bit as hot for them as last year. It's going to be a little cooler for the Elite Beast race at like 80, but we still top out at 99 degrees here, and this course to me looks more brutal than last year. So that alone is going to be a huge task for this crowd today. So congrats to anyone who's out there doing that. But secondly, I don't care if it is single track. If Jamie really wanted to pass, she could be past Rose by now, and she's not. So Rose is taking, again, her mountain game to the next level because she's had Jamie on her hip for probably 5 or 6 minutes straight without a pass attempt.
And I think you're seeing Brusa is content to just be connected to her. I mean, whether she's sitting in second or third, they're essentially in that second podium position, and they're working together to establish a gap right now over Rhea Koval. So, we talked before about, do you throw attacks against each other or do you work together? This is a perfect example of two athletes content to work together, at least for the time being. There'll be a moment where they're no longer friends, but right now, it's advantageous to both of them to just continue to run a steady pace and not be trying to hurt each other. As you can see, top right, up ahead, it's Josiah Middow climbing, and I believe that was Atkins listed in front of him. Ryan Atkins, also with something on the back of his shorts that made it look like that pirate that Hawk Call had as well. But Atkins has slowly worked his way up this course. And again, they're ascending. This is not flat. What you're seeing right now is still a relatively steep climb. It's runnable the entire way. But these athletes have been turning over mostly uphill or downhill for the entirety of this race.
Kirk, this
So
is
I don't know
awesome
what-
looking at this. Because you've raced these guys, I've raced these guys. You know this game of chess that's happening right here. Ryan says, go ahead and over rev those climbs, Josiah. I'm going to take it right back on every descent. And he did. But Josiah just said, okay, you moved your pawn up. I'm going to move mine right back. And he took him at the base of the climb. So now he has 2 miles roughly to drop Atkins more than Atkins can make up on the subsequent descent. And you're a descender yourself. How does that play into your mind, having someone like Josiah go right back around on every climb?
I like the move, man. I really do. I think it's easy to pay Ryan Atkins a lot of respect, and he's earned that from the other racers, right? And then for a very tenured racer like Josiah to go out here and just be like, I don't care who you are. I'm gonna go climb. I'm gonna go out climb you, and to do that, and you have to think like a little bit, right? Like Atkins worked really hard at descent to get a gap, right? And he made up a lot of placement, and that's his wheelhouse. But then right away to turn around and go up against gravity and have somebody kind of blow right by you, and that's kind of what it looked like. Now it's on, right? Now it's like, all right, if I'm Atkins, I'm thinking like, do I want to burn a little bit more of a match to keep him in sight? Or do I let him go and run my own race? Because it is still really early in this race to be like, I don't know, burning a match or two when you don't have that many. So I'm actually very curious to see how this looks on the top of this climb once we get there.
It's a master class.
I
that
will
we're
say,
watching.
Kirk, I think it's important to note we've seen these guys battle on a similar mountain course in Big Bear a couple times. And both of those times, Josiah went out hard near the front of the pack, Lars Arneson joining them both of those times. But Atkins never allowed those guys to separate from him significantly. In both of those races at Big Bear, he went toe-to-toe with them, and any gap that they formed, he pulled it back on the descents quickly so that he could then be ready to make a move on the final climb. But he actually out-climbed both of those guys on the final climbs each of the last 2 years, even though VJ took him on one of those.
Mm-hmm. And this is, I think what we're watching here is two incredibly seasoned racers match wits.
Mm-hmm.
No one's raced in the mountains more than Josiah in this field. And if anyone has, it's Ryan Atkins. These two know exactly how to race. But the one thing Josiah's not used to is Spartan race. That's the only thing he's not totally used to. And I believe personally that when he sees Big Bear in the past, it says 10K. It doesn't say Spartan Super to him. It says 10K obstacle race, and he runs it like a 10K. But we all know that a Spartan 10K hits like a 15K. You can't really expect a mountain Spartan to play out with that duration or intensity because of the carries and the grind. And he clearly today is not approaching this the way he approached those last 2 races. So he's learning on the fly too. And this yo-yoing, Atkins was never in front of him on the first climb. He started the second climb ahead of him. The third climb, his goal is to be maybe halfway up it by the end, and then by the final descent down. So he doesn't need to win any of these. He needs to make it further and further each climb ahead of him.
So who did we have there?
And
Was
there-
that Jamie Brusa doing burpees on the wall? Did she work that? Was
That's
that
what
who
it-
we saw there? Did she work that hard
That's
to
what it
get up
looked
there
like.
only to? And that's a testament to what does running uphill do to your explosiveness, right? I can think of some of the worst cramps in my life out on the race course when we had an 8-foot wall that was uphill and you have to run and jump up that thing. So bad to the point where I fell on my back and rolled around due to calf cramps of all things, which I don't even deal with. Now you have somebody early in a race who can't get up the wall. And it makes me feel for it, to be honest, because I've been in that situation where that's tough. And then 2, that just changed things that quick. And did you see how quickly it looked like she was wrapping up her 30 burpees? When was that Rose or Alex Walker was getting wall? So she lost. I mean, obviously she'd worked pretty hard to get maybe 2 minutes up on a great athlete like Alex, only to lose it all right away again. So I think we're going to find out what kind of athlete Jamie is now, aren't we?
We are, and she has now dropped back into that portion of the field where Casey Monroe just came through. So she is now, you can see right in front of her, it looked like Rhea Coble was passing her. That's how much of a gap that had formed, about a minute, minute and a half. And Ashley Heller, I believe, is also in the mix in that group. But we've got Jack back out on the course once again with an update. Jack, what do we got?
So I'm looking up. It looks like Hawk Call is first place. He's power hiking really hard. I'm going to turn it around, get him on camera. Yes, this is Hawk Call in the front. And I'll try to get you the rest of the people afterwards. That might... Okay, there are a few guys within a minute of him. I can't ID it, but that's Hawk Call number 1.
So
Dave, I
again, we're
wanna
looking at
highlight
Hawk
something
Call
for us
up in
right
the
now.
front. Go for it.
This is really important to grasp what these athletes are facing. So at the bottom, where Brusa failed, is mile 3 and let's call it 3.1, 5K into the race course. They climb until 5.5 and then descend down 7, and they hit 2 obstacles. So from mile 3.1 to probably 7.1, they hit 2 obstacles, and those obstacles are Tyrolean Traverse and hurdles. Tyrolean Traverse could cause some issues if your hamstrings are starting to cramp, but really, this is just a 4-mile mountain run now. So anyone who made it this far with legs gets to start going, and anyone who's starting to struggle is going to be really, really exposed. When's the last time we saw a 4-mile mountain run in the middle of a race with really nothing to interrupt these people?
Yeah, that's
And
a
you
good
usually
point,
only
Bracken.
see these-
It's going to turn into a runner's course. And let's talk about this. We got a great shot of Hawk Call here, right? What do you think David is going through his head? Because what I wonder is, all right, last year he went out hot, he built up a lead, and then he got gobbled up at the end. Now this year in these races up to this point in the North American Series races, he's actually been a little humbled. He hasn't been on a podium yet. And I think he's been beaten every time he stepped out and towed the line. So I'm trying to wonder what this says about his confidence right now, like repeating his exact strategy of last year. If I were a betting man, and I would have bet that he would have went out more conservative today. And here we have him again, leading the way. I don't know, Dave, what do you think about that?
Well, I think a few things. First is that this is clearly the terrain that he is most confident on. When you look at the different race setups and formats, and this is slightly less steep climbing than you'd have in a Big Bear, where it's a little bit more power hikey. but that he likes to run, not power hike anyways. If I'm that guy sitting in first position, there's a couple different ways to think about it. One is stay comfortable, stay comfortable, stay comfortable. But when you have 3 to 4 men within 60 seconds of you, you're also thinking, keep the pressure on. And so what he wants to do is try and get the type of lead where the men behind him stop chasing me and they start battling each other instead, because they start concerning themselves with, well, can I at least hold second position?
Listen, I raced his father for almost a decade. There
We
is
both did.
no cautious bone in the Call family. They will hedge their bets aggressively. Hawk Call, if he is anything like his father, and we've interviewed him, I'd say he's a lot like his father. He is brash, he is egotistical, and he is arrogant. And I mean that in all three of those in a positive manner. You need all of those to be a dominant killer endurance athlete. He got beat on his home course last year, and it spoiled his perfect debut. People have been waiting for Hobie's son to come up for several years, and Hobie's he's pumped them up. He's talked about how good his kids are going to be. And Hawk lost after leading for like 2 hours, and he almost passed out on course. And there was nothing but ego that it brought him all the way through this past year back to this course. He has a lot to prove. He knows there's no tire, like we said earlier, and he is here to eradicate that memory from everyone. There is not going to be any cautiousness from him on course. He's out here to dominate today.
Now, Bracken, I think you're spot on with his mentality, his mental game, and how he approaches this particular race. But it was also the Hercules hoist that gave him an issue on this course last year. And that's something that I just can't anticipate giving him problems again, as we're seeing a second male that looked like Tyler Veerman coming up the climb. So, again, my point being, both of the things that gave him issues, which were both within the final quarter mile of that race, are not going to be issues this year to finish him off. He had a solid chance to win or come in second last year. I believe Atkins took him on the final big climb before descending, but he would not have lost to Ryland Shadegg were it not for those two back-to-back obstacles.
Yeah, perks. I'm going to rib Jack Bauer a little bit here. Perks of not being able to stay with Hawk Call on a climb is that we get to see second and third come by once our friend Jack Bauer is faded. And I will say that I am impressed. Look at that gap that Tyler Veerman has on whoever is in third place right now. I didn't expect that. I figured he was going to run aggressive and then latch on to whoever's up front. Like, Tyler Veerman's out climbing the Josiah Midhows of the world, and we haven't seen Atkins yet. And here's Tyler, like, now we're to the point in the race where he's asserted himself and he's actually building a gap on the guys behind him instead of fading, and that's promising.
Speaking of
he certainly
promising,
is.
Ryan Atkins has not lost ground to Josiah. Oh, no, he has. That's Rylan. That is Rylan. I take that entire statement back. Rylan has been caught by Josiah. Josiah is demolishing this climb.
And Jack Bauer is going to give us an update right now.
All right, so I split. Had a minute 15 on Tyler and Kirk. By the way, I stopped so I could get you guys, everyone else. I would have kept up with Hawk. But anyway,
Sure you did, Jack. Sure
Tyler,
you did.
A minute 15 down. Josiah and Rylan were about 2:30. 2:30, and now we got Ryan Atkins. He's 3:10 down at the moment. So there's your top five.
Just about 40 seconds. And there goes Atkins right now.
Put on Atkins
on one climb. But you have to think, Bracken, that Atkins could also take 40 seconds back on a descent, especially we have a couple mile and a half long descents coming up in this race. Plenty of opportunity to close that gap, especially because this race is not an uphill finish.
Oh, for sure. And that doesn't disparage Atkins at all. That just highlights how freakish Josiah is as a Masters athlete against these young bucks. It's just crazy the type of engine this man still has. And just like a fighter's power is the last thing to go, that uphill grinding is the last thing that Josiah is going to lose. He's got that all day long.
Now, one name we have not mentioned, and
it's 8:15 in the morning there, and look at how that sun's beating on him already. I know that it's early and I know the sun isn't as intense yet, but look how exposed that mountain is. I just want to point that out, that even though it's early, and I did check the forecast, there's supposed to be like 10-mile-an-hour winds, but you know how it gets when you get in those little dips and ski runs? There ain't no wind in there. That wind is blocked by the hills typically until you get up and crest up top. So I'm guessing these guys are already baking.
Oh, they're hot. It's the sun hits really hard out here in Utah. It just does. And again, you saw how dry it was. There's no moisture in the air to help cool you off a little bit. A lot of your sweat is just evaporating right off you. And if you were curious, just how dry is it? Did you see the dust that was kicking up in Hawk Call's wake as he was descending right there? And you can see Ryan Atkins again, hands on the knees, grinding up the hill, trying to minimize the damage. But Steve Hammond is ready to give us an update right now. Steve, what do you got for us?
Thanks, David. Out here on the men's course, super steep descent that we just saw Hall just go down now. I just want to talk about a very pivotal point in this course. They're going to head down to Twister just now. I can't see second place male, but they're going to head down to Twister and then come back up. And this point in the course right here is where Ryan and Hawk had that little moment, and that's where Ryan overtook. I don't think that's going to happen this year. It's a little bit earlier on the course, but they've still got a very, very big climb all the way up to just below that ridge just up there. So I'm just here at the steep bit. We see Tyler Vim having a race of his life right now, utilising those downhills. He told me he was going to go for it this morning, balls to the wall. He's exactly doing that. Amazing effort, and we're going to just see in a minute who's going to come down in third. Back to you guys. Very, very exciting out here.
Thanks again, Steve. And as mentioned, that's Tyler Veerman sitting in second position. Hawk Call, just so aggressive today. And then Josiah and Rylan Shadeg battling for that third position with Atkins lurking in fifth. So there's your top five men. And I don't think it's that different than we expected to see at the lead pack. I mean, is there anyone that you're thinking, wow, they're really missing? Mark Batris has run really strong this year, but I wouldn't call this a Mark Batris course.
I mean, we haven't seen VJ Jones yet, have we? So
yeah, we have not.
We're what are we, 50 minutes into this race? And we haven't mentioned his name yet, which is a little different, isn't it, fellas? But I think the two people that we know typically manage their efforts well and close well. We had a lot of shots of Ryan Atkins power hiking uphill. He's not going to fade. He's only going to charge. So I actually really like Ryan Atkins' positioning. But VJ Jones, now he's suddenly becoming a question mark. He is a late charger as well. So how much course is left? Plenty. But if those moves are going to start to be made by like a favorite like VJ, I feel like he's going to have to start reeling some of that line back in right now. What do you think, Bragan?
Yeah, and we can't see how far behind he is, but what we are seeing right now is that downhills are going to matter more than uphills today. The steeper the downhill is, the more it rewards skill over engine, and these are nasty, nasty descents, Kirk. And we see Rylan move past that camera and Tyler Veerman much differently than Josiah looked. Now, we don't want to go too far into visuals, but you can tell visually who's attacking a choppy technical descent and who is managing the descent. Josiah was managing. We know Rylan and Veerman are going to bomb it. We know that Hawk's going to bomb it. We know Atkins is going to send it. We know VJ is going to send it. Mark Batris, this isn't quite his send it terrain. So I think the downhillers are all going to meet up at some point on this course. And let's keep in mind, Hawk on our episode with him, Kirk, claimed that he is the fastest downhiller, that no one can run downhill faster than him. We're going to find out today if that's true or not.
Sure
well,
are.
I mean,
and there's
the
Ryan
scary
Atkins
thing is
out
that...
on the screen.
Oh, go ahead, Dave.
Take it, Kirk. Let's
I was
go.
going to say, the scary thing is, we got a little delay here, folks. So if you hear us talking over each other, technology, guys. But, I mean, the scary thing about that is, Hawk is a confident young man. And if he says he is the best descender in sport, well, he also just led the first climb. So where does that leave chinks in his armor if what he says is true? Like, if that carries through, what's going to happen? What options does it leave everybody else?
Well, you would say his weaknesses could be the heavy carries. And Steve Hammond's going to give us an update, and then we can get back into that. Steve.
Whoa, a little windy out here, guys. But just saw Tyler Veerman go past. He's completed Twitter. Now, there is an amazing battle. You mentioned the battle of chess going on with Josiah, Rylan Shadegg, and Atkins just back in the picture just over there. They're all a tight group. They're going up this climb. Now, this is pretty much, they've got about a 1,500-foot climb here, all the way up through Beta, and it doesn't end there like it did last year. It keeps going up. It's about 200 or 300 feet of more than last year. They keep going up to the top, and then from the top, there's a very runnable, beautiful section of 2 or 3 miles. We'll see how that plays into the hands of the runners on this course. But I'm going to quickly go off and see them up the top. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Steve. And that's a great update. And I want to point out that that climb is the climb where last year we saw Ryan Atkins make his move on Hawk Call and pass him. It's got a riverbed that the course was winding in and out of as they ascended last year. I don't know if that's where they're going to send him on that particular climb. But Rylan Shadegg also made his significant move, passing Josh McAdams on that climb there as well. And McAdams I have not seen today. I don't know if he's racing today, but he ran the entire race last year in a pair of New Balance RC Elite V1s, which is not a trail shoe. It's more of a carbon plated road shoe, but it has little teeth in it. And his feet were basically falling apart by the end of the course of all that ascending last year. Bracken, what do you expect to happen over the course of this next climb and a little bit of rolling at the top?
Well, here's the crazy thing. That's mile 7. So we're just over halfway through. This feels like we've lived an entire race so far, and that is mile 7. So we are going to see all the cards on the table. This is the last big climb. If you have climbing in your legs, now is the time to use it. And Josiah, this is the farthest he's been into a mountain beast, still ahead of the descenders. Now, Rylan's right on his butt, as is Atkins, but he started the climb ahead, and that is so huge mentally.
You know, as I was saying about the women's race, about how I like those 3 women, Jamie, Rhea, and Rose working together. We just have the exact same thing with Rylan, Josiah, and Atkins, and they all have sort of different strengths. You could relate Rylan to Atkins a little bit, but Josiah certainly maybe on the climbing end might be the best climber of those 3. And now there's sort of a chance, right? There's sort of a chance for a group of guys to say, let's go get this young kid Hawk Call. Like, let's do something now.
I think that is VJ that we're seeing on screen right now. Not to interrupt you, Kirk, but we're getting our first VJ sighting, and it looks like he is certainly not rushing in and out of that water station right there. Taking his time.
He's hurting.
He's hurting.
Have you ever seen
he's
VJ
mitigating.
walk on
He's
course?
trying to basically. It's been a long time since I've witnessed that, and I would say it appears that he's not trying to win this race. He might just be trying to, pick up a couple points here or there in case he needs them. But he may have reached the point in this race where he's decided, my 4th race that's going to matter is going to be the final race of the season.
Well, let's speculate, guys. What do you think's going on there? I mean, I don't have a clock on this, but we saw Hawk there at least 5 minutes ago, maybe up to 7 minutes ago,
maybe more. Yeah.
Is this sort of a training race for him, or we just find it might be an off day, or is this by design? What do you guys think?
Personally, I don't think that this is the most ideal course for VJ for a couple of reasons, and one being that the descents are a little more technical, and I think a course like this that's mostly ascending and descending with a lot of brush and a lot of rocky terrain, it takes away a little bit of the foot speed element, and as one of the quicker runners in the race, he doesn't get to utilize his best attributes and his best skills. So I never looked at this as a race that I saw VJ really looking at a top 3 position. And he might be being realistic about this, that the most important thing is don't get hurt in this race.
Yeah,
Bracken, your thoughts?
The thing about this course, even though altitude in Colorado helps here a ton, as does being used to dry atmosphere, this is not Colorado terrain. And VJ is still evolving as an athlete. And last year he ran into problems at OCR Worlds in that he said it was a different terrain than I was training on, a different incline and a different terrain. As someone who lived in Colorado Springs near VJ, I can attest that you cannot find this. You can find switchbacks, you can find scree, you can find hard packed dirt. You cannot find bushwhacking. It literally does not exist. And so his engine just might not be translating to this. And when it doesn't translate and when you start to struggle, the heat hits you earlier because you're starting to crack. And we saw him at the water station showing that he's feeling the heat, where the rest of the guys still seemed like they are managing the heat.
That's exactly what I was talking about, Bracken, that this brush, it completely changes the dimension of this race, and it takes away VJ's biggest advantage, which is he really is one of the 2 or 3 quickest men in the field at any given race, but quickness isn't really going to be a part of this event today. This is a grind up and technical descending, and you're seeing guys that like to be in that nasty stuff a little bit more. They're the ones who are truly excelling today.
Yeah, the way VJ looked coming through that water stop screams heat, doesn't it? If you saw, he took his hat off, filled it up with water, put it back on his head. He drank a water cup, poured another one over him. Oh, it's coming, right? But it's one thing to know it's coming. It's another thing to be out there on course actually doing it, right? But I will say about VJ, he did really, he came from behind. And yes, he had a great swim in Mexico, which was the last North American Series race, which propelled him to the lead. But he sort of entered that box where I was like, VJ will be great anywhere he goes, right? So I'm not going to count him out yet, because VJ has proven to us enough times now that he is a player. He hasn't blown up or finished back in the pack at all in the recent 2 years in any big race. So there's time.
Now, I just received a text message update saying VJ indicated.
See Josiah and Ryland Shadegg battling it out with Atkins right behind. So I don't think we'll see VJ feature. I could be wrong. I hope I am wrong. We will see what happens. We've got a lot of climbing to go. They're going up there. Back to you guys.
Field was growing, and I'm not sure if that's entirely true, if it's between Hawk and the whole field, or if the gap between Hawk and Veerman just grew significantly, because it looks like the field gained significantly on Veerman. Atkins, Shadegg, and Josiah now very close to Tyler Veerman.
Man, watching Emma here charge up through the men's field, and she still is doing her wave at the camera, smile. She's the only athlete we've had on screen today, other than Ryan Atkins, who doesn't live above 6,000 feet. It puts into perspective how truly great her ability.
Something I have a hard time wrapping my mind around, Bracken, is we talk about this on our podcast, Running Public, a good bit, but we both live at sea level, Bracken, and I say going out to elevation to race a mountain race is like putting a governor on yourself, right? If my full potential best day is 100%, I'm capped at like 85% best case scenario. So
it makes you wonder if she was living at elevation, how good would she be?
Ugh. It's scary. It shows how good both the first place and the men and the women are. We have been focusing on this chase group because it's hard to keep up with the leader. So we are seeing that 2nd through 4th battle on both sides, and you can see how they're playing off each other's strengths. They're trying to eat each other up on descents. They're looking at each other, marking each other on the climbs. They're making up gaps. They're always having something to chase after. And Hawk and Emma really just have themselves and their fitness out there, and they are destroying people. When your chase pack is losing ground and they're working hard, you're great.
Now, Bracken, I don't want to change the subject too much, but I would like the viewers at home to be aware of why we are having minimal coverage on the women's race right now. And it appears that one of our rabbits that was for the women's race rolled an ankle on one of the descents on this really rugged, rocky, nasty terrain. And so that is why we only have minimal coverage of the women's race at this point. We'll be doing a little bit of shuffling to try and get a bit more coverage of that. But we are down a rabbit. And that goes to show you how dangerous and precarious the downhill running on this course is and how much skill it takes.
Yeah, I mean, how privileged were we? Unfortunately, it was our two-time world champ, Robert Killian, who rolled an ankle out there. It takes athletes like Robert Killian to keep up with these people out on course. So hopefully he's feeling all right, and he's supposed to be racing tomorrow, but that might not be looking too likely now. I want to do a little speculating on a topic, fellas. Now, we know Emma Cook-Clark is up front. We know Hot Call is up front. Other than our two race leaders, and Bracken, I'll kick it to you first, whose positioning do you like the most to finish the race strong? Who would you like to be right now, both on the women's side and the men's side, other than the leaders, and why?
I'll start with the men because I think the men are the only ones who have a chance to run the leader down. I think Emma is just the class of maybe both fields. Rylan
Absolutely.
and Ryan. Ryan Atkins has been here before and he's where he wants to be, but Rylan has that added boost of not having been here that many times. No one spent more time in these mountains than he has. No one has spent more time exposed to the sun at really high altitudes than Rylan. No one has. And yet this is only his second time being up in the mix for a lead at a big race. So he's got all the characteristics of everyone else, plus a lot more adrenaline coursing through his system than anyone else. So give me Rylan. On the women's side, I think I want the opposite. Give me Rose Wetzel. She's the old dog who's still showing new tricks. She's been here so many times, but she has yet to win a mountain race. She's done everything else but win a mountain race. And so even though she's been here a million times before, this one feels a little different to me.
You know, it's so funny you say this, Bracken, because those were my two picks as well for athletes that I like how they looked the last time we saw them on screen. And for a number of reasons, I look at the motivation factor as well. It's not that I don't think Ryan Atkins is motivated, because he is, but, you know, I think when you've gone a while without really getting that big podium finish or that big win that you've been seeking, it's got that extra fire in the belly. And you know, for Rylan, I think he's been chomping at the bit, like waiting for his opportunity, and this is a really prime one. But I want to talk about Rose specifically because you're looking at an athlete who was at the top, the absolute pinnacle of the women's sport for a period of about a year and a half, maybe 2 years, was Rose Wetzel and Amelia Boone back and forth for a few years in the 2014, 2015, maybe even early 2016. And there was a period where on certain courses, Rose was unbeatable. And all of a sudden, you saw the women's field get a bit deeper. You saw the emergence of a Lindsay Webster. You saw Nicole Miracle. You saw Faye Stenning come in. And all of a sudden, Rose was pushed down the pecking order, followed by having a child, some other personal life issues with health with her family. And in the last year or so, she's talked a lot about how she's really gotten back into what has made her the athlete that she was, that was so great. And she's finally feeling the confidence and fitness. And I think you combine that with the opportunity that's in front of her right now. Rose Wetzel is primed to have a huge second place finish today if she can hold it all together.
Well, I'm gonna piggyback then. I'm gonna let us speculate some more because I like speculating, guys. So when we get eyes back on this women's race, other than seeing Emma just crush up front, who's going to be in second, who's going to be in third, and who's going to be in fourth? Take your shots, Bracken. Who do you think?
I feel like I was getting such good coverage, and
I think we see Rose. I do, and I think that we've seen Alex Walker move up. That would be my guess. I would say Rose and Alex are going to be 2 and 3.
I'm going to go with Rose in the second position, Rhea still in third, but Walker has now moved up to fourth. And forgive me for this because I did not get eyes on the start line ahead of time. But is Annie Doobie present in this race or no?
Nope.
Well, that does shake things up because obviously she would have been one of my big picks. On the men's side, I have a hard time counting out Ryan Atkins. Like, I could easily see him somehow stealing this entire race just because he does what he does. But my question is can Josiah hold him off on the descent in that 2-3 position? I'm not sure that he can.
if Josiah could hear our commentary now, which he can't live, we just gave him a disservice saying we like Ryan Atkins and Rylan Shadig. Too bad he can't keep that receipt and use it as fuel during the race. But he's very tenured, and so we'll see if he keeps it clean on the back half of the course.
We got Jack Bauer up here with a little update for us because it looks like Rose Wetzel still in second position. And right behind her, Rhea Coble. So I feel good about my
David,
picks
you
right
nailed
there,
it,
guys.
brother.
It was just
look
how
at
they
that
looked.
descending. They're
Go
both
into it,
picking their
Bracken.
way
Let's
down
hear it.
that descent. You're both braking. And this is the only thing that's going to leave the door open for other women. It's really too bad Jamie ran into wall issues early because she would throw some spice into this battle here. Both of those women were breaking down it. Now, we don't know. Rose looks like she's hobbling. Rose has a hitch in her giddy up. She is not running smooth. I don't know if it's quad damage from the descents or if she rolled something, but she is not herself anymore. And we know Rhea's not going to fade. So if there's a descender behind these two, the door is still open.
To me, that looked like an ankle, Bracken. I'm not sure what your thoughts were, but that looked like the stride of someone who was having tenderness in one of her ankles. And maybe that's something that Rose will be able to shake off, but there's a clear limp going on there.
It's the last thing you want with 2.5 miles of descending to the finish.
I was just going to say, I think that's something that'd work itself out when she has the opportunity to climb again, but she really needs to use those, as we see right here. She kind of, less impact. She's able to kind of use her mechanics the way she would like. But yeah, exactly right. I think she's going to hold tough on this descent, but when she has to descend again, it's going to be a tough deal. I will say, now I don't know how long ago maybe Rose hurt herself slightly there, but I'm very impressed with Rhea Coble being in the mix. Even following some of that descending and all that looks very promising for Rhea. And we do have sort of a long, gradual, grindy climb on the back half of this course before they do their final descent. And that's a lot of room for Rhea to get to work, maybe even get a little bit of a cushion if she can. So right now it looks really promising for Rhea considering the circumstances.
It does. And this is Rose. Dave, before you finish off, I do want to highlight Rose. Of one, other than maybe chopping descents, one of the only things she struggled with historically is getting into and onto obstacles. She lands and takes off explosively right away. Even with that ankle, she's up moving, but she does tend to dawdle beforehand. Rhea got 3/4 of the way across the twister before Rose even touched the obstacle.
And right now, you've got eyes on the 4th place female, and it's Chris Rogloski. Back in it. She worked her way back up. And that's a name none of us thought we'd see up at the front again. And if you're Chris Rogloski, you're about 30 seconds behind Rose Wetzel, and you're seeing her limping. I think you smell blood in the water.
I think Chris realized she got out way too hot.
Second.
Yeah. I was, dang it, Bracken, we think alike, don't we? She realized
she looks the best right now.
No, it's fantastic. We're in sync here, but I would just say she realized she went out too hot. She realized we know her mindset now, and it's I'm gonna go out there and win. I'm gonna go out there and beat Emma, and she realized that was a fool's dream about 5 minutes into this race, and I think she consciously backed the throttle off, allowed herself to manage her effort, and maybe is even racing a little more tenured than she is. And now she's going to make her push on that second climb. That's what I think is going to happen. I think we did get nervous for her, but I think maybe she deserves a little more credit with knowing her body than we think. Don't you, fellas?
We've got Jack out here. Jack wants to give an update. Jack, let's hear it.
Yeah. So Chris moved her way back into 4th place. It looked like she got dropped early, so she's charging hard. You're definitely right. Rose has a little bit of a limp. Looked like maybe her left ankle. I didn't ask her, but she's hobbling a little. Rhea, they're about 2 seconds separated right now. This is the point where Ryan Atkins last year passed Hawk Call to make his move into 1st place on that steep kind of stream section right here. They're going to be going through some rock. I'm going to try to, I think that's Jamie maybe in 5th. So I'm going to go back and get a status on that. But top 4. Emma's clear of them by several minutes, but it's a good 2 to 4 battle right now.
Thanks, Jack. And if we were to go and talk about how each of these athletes looked, obviously we know that Emma Cook Clark looks phenomenal right now. But if you're looking at Rhea Coble and Rose Wetzel, obviously Rhea is going to look more comfortable on the climb and the descent because of the ankle with Rose. But I think she's just always comfortable going uphill. To me, she's an athlete that has only like 2 gears. She like kind of gets the second gear and then she just kind of maintains it for the rest of the race. Rose has a couple extra gears, but she has to sit in that first gear on the climb comparatively. I think Chris Rogloski looks like she is primed to move into that top 2 position if she can manage to sustain on this next climb, because she's clearly descending well.
I agree with you on that. And Rhea is a compact athlete. She doesn't have the long limbs that some of the others have, and that lends itself to her stride never changes. She looks the same when she's hurting and to when she's feeling good. And normally, I would say she gets to the top of this mountain well clear, and she's now in the driver's seat. But this is the one climb that it is not super efficient to run. It's that creek bed. There's a lot of flat steps rather than angled steps. Power hiking is going to be necessary at times, and she spends less time power hiking than anyone else. Chris has been up running 14ers, power hiking a lot through boulder fields. This will actually be maybe the only climb on course where she could on paper have an advantage over Rhea.
And I want to interrupt you for a moment, Bracken, just because what we saw is Jamie Brusa and then Alex Walker. And if Brusa did complete that obstacle safely, Twister, then there's a battle brewing right here for the 5th and final position. We're talking about big money differences between these positions when we go 1st, 2nd, 3rd, 4th, 5th. And between 5th and 6th, for an event, you're only talking about $100 difference, or 4th and 5th, it's $100 difference. But when we're talking about that 1, 2, 3, you're talking about $2,000 for 2nd place, $1,000 for 3rd, and $800 for 4th. So those places really matter.
Alex Walker isn't really known to fade, not from my recent memory. And she's also somebody that I would say takes care of business out on the race course, meaning she's not going to make any glaringly obvious mistakes. She's not going to offshoot or miscalculate her effort in any major way. So and you can see this gap closing even a little bit there between Alex and Jamie. I like her positioning to continue moving up. I think Alex is, she's to that phase in the race where she smells blood in the water. And I think, as you can see, she's even making up more ground here. But I just don't see her fading. She will not finish worse than 5th place, without question in my mind right now. And then on that flip side, we were talking about Rhea Coble. And, Rhea is historically not known as like a fantastic descender. At least that's our perception. But have we ever seen Rhea in a close battle recently, late in a race? I think that maybe we have an opportunity to see Rhea Coble maybe unlock another door to her descending if she's battling it out. In my opinion, this late in a race, there's a reason to run more aggressive. It's not her body that's not capable. It's sometimes, your mind that slows you down going downhill. If I'm going to battle for 2nd place, I'm going full send and I'm going to take some risks.
It's definitely the mental game with Rhea Coble. And when she debuted in this sport, and I want to say it was 2016 when we first started seeing her emerge, she was relatively unbeatable for about a 3-race period. I believe it started with the Monterey race that year. And she came in out of nowhere, crushed everyone, and we said, wow, this is a new major contender in the field. And then within a few races, we realized she's not as dominant a force as we expected it to be. And I think I agree with you entirely that a lot of that is mental with her, and that when she's mentally locked in, she could be so tough to beat, but she doesn't love to attack. She's more of a hold her pace and wear everybody else down kind of racer.
I agree with you guys. Now, we mentioned a couple times that maybe she and Rose don't love descending because it's too technical and they prefer to break. And we mentioned that we picked people over Josiah, even though he's sitting in the driver's seat right now. And I kind of want to expand on why, because it sounds like maybe we're just being disrespectful to an athlete or two. And I would say that if the course ended at the bottom of the last descent, my money might be on Josiah. but we have the last about 1,000 meters with something like 8 or 10 obstacles. And we know that from the moment they touch that to the end of it, he will not be better at any one of those obstacles or the transitions on and off than Ryland, then Ryan, and then Tyler. And so if it still was just an engine competition, he would be one of the favorites, but he will do nothing but lose on the last set of obstacles time. And Rose will do nothing but lose on that last descent if her ankle continues to betray her. So if things play according to script here, Chris Roglaski is going to arrive at the bottom of the mountain in first. And there's a real good chance Alex Walker passes both on the descents, unless Rose figures out her ankle and Rhea decides to, like Kirk said, I'm in a battle, we're going full send.
How does one figure out their
Another
ankle
thing to note
mid-race,
is-
Bracken?
Sometimes those things numb up for a little bit. Sometimes in the middle of a workout or in the middle of a race, it's really bad when it first happens, and it almost just like toes the line after a while. Like, you're not going to arrest me? We're really going to keep doing this? All right. In the moment she takes her shoe off after the race, it's game over. But there is a chance that it numbs
she won't be
up
walking tomorrow.
and just... No, but there's a chance she can get through that final descent. But if it doesn't, you're going to take her tentative descending and add an ankle to it. She might get passed by 2 or 3 women on the last descent.
And I want to point out some of the long-term implications that this race has in the positioning that we currently have. Let's talk about the men's field, just because when we look at the total point standings right now, you have VJ in first and Atkins in second. So clearly an opportunity for Atkins to leap up the leaderboard, possibly catch VJ depending on how things go. Shadeg currently sits in fourth position behind Mark Batres. So he is about 80 points behind Mark Batres. And then you have Nick Matz, and there's a gap with Mark Gaudet, Logan Broadbent, Lars Arneson, and it's not until 10th that you see Hawk Call. So Hawk with an opportunity to dramatically move up. And a lot of this is because of the races that they ran at. Let's see. Shadeg has finished no worse than 8th in any race this year. He was 6th in San Luis Obispo. He was 5th in Big Bear, and then he was 8th in Puebla in Mexico. And so he is looking to establish, he's going to be top 8 in 4 consecutive races, puts him in a really strong position. But Hawk Call with a win today, because we know how many 300-point win is so dramatic. How do you guys think that this impacts the season?
Well, you have to think, Hawk is I believe the only one on the top 10 list who's only raced twice. So that also goes to show how well is that correct, fellas? Has he only raced twice, I believe, or does he have 3 races under his belt?
He has a 9th place finish at Big Bear. He was 4th at San Luis Obispo, and I don't believe he raced at Puebla. At least if he did, I don't have results for him in front of me.
Right. So on paper, it looks a little worse for Hawk than it actually is. So getting a 3rd race, we won't actually know how this all shakes out for him until the very 5th race of the season. But he's only going to move up after today.
Yeah, you're correct on that. And what it does
we're
is
going to
it
take a
gives
look at the
him hope.
leaderboard here so that we can talk this out for a moment, because Hawk Call has 372 points, which if you add 300 to it, theoretically, he's at 672. Now, he'll still be a race short of some of these guys. So on the virtual lead, he won't be quite there. But or in the virtual lead, he'll be right up there. But in the actual leaderboard, he'll still be a race short. He may be behind some of these guys. But it's an opportunity for him to then, get anywhere in the top 10 and put himself in a top 3-4 position overall for the series. One win can do that for you.
Now, speaking of all of these gentlemen, as we looked at that list there before, now who are we not talking about that's not on that list? Like and Bracken, I know you got some good intel on this. If Jack Bauer could chime in, if he'd have some great intel on this, but let's talk like 5th through 10th. Who are we looking at that might be able to sneak in there that we haven't heard of or that we haven't talked about yet? What do you think, Bracken?
I'm almost more disappointed by the guys who aren't here, who aren't giving themselves a chance to sneak in. Like, I would love to see Lars Arneson on this course. And I know that's not even the question you asked me, but as a fan, as someone who's sitting here, if you've got a twinge, it becomes a cramp on something like this. If you don't have a twinge, you might develop one. I'm interested to see how he jumps off this thing, how he lands. Well, wrong direction. Grab that.
What was it? Yeah, that'd be great.
That was
the stairway to
and
Sparta.
I think Steve
was it
Hammond
not?
can go too.
Seconds going into the descent. There's no more climbing really after this point, so whoever gets first to the bottom, that's going to make a big difference.
So we have a dark horse in the mist right now, and again, Hawk Call really trying to hold on to this thing as he's beginning the descent. And Steve Hammond has additional updates out in the course. Steve, take it away.
Hey guys, I couldn't quite hear what Jack was saying if you went live to him, but Hawkcore has a 2 minute and 40-second lead. He has the lead on the chase pack, which is Tyler Veerman, and there's about 20 seconds between Tyler in second, Ryan Atkins in third, and Josiah Midell, and just behind that is Rylan Shadegg. So here comes Tyler right now. He is about 250, so Hawk's actually could put another 10 seconds on. Here's Ty Bidman coming here. He's got a little bit of time on. Let me just Stairway to Sparta, making that look easy. Now, we are 10.5 here, guys. It is all the way downhill. This is it. This is where you want to absolutely go for it. We have Tyler, Ryan Atkins. Here we go. And then super gnarly descent down there. And off they go. Hawk's about 250 ahead now as Ryan comes up. Tyler grabbing his side a little bit as well. Amazing stuff. Guys, back to you. Take it away.
Well, quick to point out a couple things. One, Hawk Call extending that lead. Truly incredible running effort from him today. And I think the day that Hawk Call has officially arrived is today. And second, that's Josiah starting to labor a little bit in the back there. And I think we called it. We knew this was coming, but, you know, can he hold himself together? He's a savvy veteran.
I think maybe the mystery gentleman, and this is via Jack Bauer's intel, there's a potential it's a gentleman named Travis Fuller, supposed to have some longer hair with a good mountain running credential. There's a chance that our mystery gentleman up front could be him. And then I wanted to ask about the elephant in the room, guys. Looks like Steve wants to chime in. Steve?
Yeah, just to chime in on that, that's a guy called Rick. He's actually running the Ultra. He's not part of the elite crew here. He just thought it'd be fun to run with the elite guys for a little bit. As Rylan Shadegg just goes on there, that's your top 5 guys, and quite a significant gap. No VJ in sight. Back to you guys. We've got to go and chase him. See you in a bit.
Kirk, pick it up again.
Well,
for
negate
us.
what I just said then. Yeah, negate what I just said there. I thought I was being smart, but I guess I was wrong. I want to talk about the one little elephant in the room we haven't chatted about quite yet. Hawk Call's looking good. This is looking really good for him. In fact, he may be building up enough of a cushion here to even make a mistake in the gauntlet down low. But we got to talk about the Hercoist, fellas. We can't not talk about the Hercoist. Is this spell impending doom for Hawk, or is this thing thing of the past? He might have too big of a lead. Doesn't even matter right now.
This has a feeling of a question that you might have thrown out on an episode of Undisputed right now, because obviously we are expecting him to have no trouble with this obstacle this year. I think that one of the reasons he struggled with it was he really was blowing up, and then he had the tire flip where he sent everything he had. And then there was nothing left for the hoist. I don't think he's going to run into the same issues this year. What do you think, Bracken? You may have lost Bracken for a minute. Now, one thing of note, with Hawkcall in the lead there, it looked like Ryan Atkins and Tyler Veerman are still your 2-3 at this moment. So Veerman has managed to hold his position, at least a podium at this point, and it's Shadeg who was actually sitting in fifth, coming over the stairway to Sparta. So maybe not working out exactly how we anticipated there. Kirk, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, we historically, again, in the brief history, we've known Rylan Sheddig. He's been a closer and he's been a descender, right? So all we've historically seen him do is pound home in these mountain races late. The problem here is he's surrounded by other fellas who are great at pounding home late in races. So it may just take away from that glow that he typically has compared to whoever he's been around in past races on that final descent. However, what is the time gap there, right? Are we talking 20, 30 seconds at most between those fellas, which means all that could flip-flop a number of times still. So I think just looking at Tyler Veerman here, obviously he's not bluffing. Obviously he's not going to blow up bad enough to go through, start walking backwards through the field. He's kind of at that point right now where he's committed. He is very committed. And all of those guys have been looking at Tyler Veerman's back for the last, how long, hour? So Tyler's, in a sense, doing a little bit of the work here. So the guys behind him have somebody to kind of focus on and chase, look at his back, stay really engaged. And Tyler's just running blind up front. Even though he's only 20 seconds ahead, he's got to keep the pedal down. Where the other fellas got their eye on a prize, and that's Tyler right now, which might play to their advantage on this last descent.
I'll be honest with you. I've watched Tyler run a lot. I've run with him. He looks like his normal Tyler Veerman stride. There's no hitch in it. There's no limp. There's no, shortening up of that stride, any fatigue levels. No worrying about his ankles right now. He's descending really well. He looks smooth. And I'm not sure that this descent is going to be where people pull him back. Now, if it's close in the final few obstacles, it's possible that Atkins could make a move. But at this point in time, Veerman looks great.
I like to think of Tyler Veerman and myself, very similar runners on flat terrain. Very similar runners on flat terrain, not at elevation. We had a chance to race each other in Florida earlier this year, and then again at San Luis Obispo. And Tyler and I were shoulder to shoulder in all three races, give or take 3 to 5 seconds halfway through the race. Now, we both made a mistake in San Luis Obispo, missed our spears, and then fell through the pack. And then in Florida, he ended up winning both races due to his fitness being great and some costly mistakes by myself and others. But the point I'm getting at here is you're going to see Tyler at his worst on flat terrain at sea level. Where you're going to see Tyler at his best is in the mountains at elevation. He lives at elevation. He trains in the mountains. That's his strong suit. And if he can go out and win races that are flat at sea level, what can he do on a course that actually suits him? And we're finally seeing that today. And I really like that.
Yeah, VJ, you're really close.
Bracken, we haven't heard from you in a while. What are your thoughts right now as the men are moving into the final section of this course? We might still be missing some audio from Bracken.
Yeah.
Are we connected now?
There he is. No, the
back. Here he
professional
is.
Bracken there might have muted himself on accident there.
Never. Now, I was unable to see the coverage for a little bit here. So have we had some updated in placement or position that I was unable to see?
5K left. You got it.
Right now, we're looking at Hawkcall in first, Veerman in second, Atkins third, Josiah fourth, Shadeg just behind Josiah in fifth. That was at Stairway to Sparta. And then since then, we've seen a good, solid descent out of Veerman.
Well, this is going to be Tyler's chance. And you may have talked about this already, but we all get to this point in a race where we think, if I miss out on a podium, it's because of this right here. And it's this moment. It's, can he keep it pegged all the way down with two monster descenders on his back?
All downhill. You're 50.
Yeah, and he is descending
No.
very well. Like, I would say that is not something I'm particularly concerned about with him because his descending has been strong all day. I would say the bigger concern is we still have a spear throw looming. And it's the first time anybody has mentioned the word spear throw. And we know how much this has shaken up a race like it did in the last race in Mexico where Ryan Atkins had his spear go in and out and took a penalty and ended up finishing fourth. Speargate.
I was going to touch on the descending piece real quick. As an athlete, most of us, and myself included, go back and dissect segments on the course after it's all done. And you can find out, how did I line up against the others on the descent, let's say. And combing through past data of races in which I've been in, Tyler's been in, Atkins, VJ, everybody, you see like a host of guys like a Johnny Luna Lima before. We have Ryan Atkins, VJ Jones, and like a Ryan Kempson who's not here today. And they all typically descend on the front end of the field. But only even in like a 20 to 25 minute descent, you have a guy like Tyler Veerman only like 30 seconds back typically. So is he the best descender of all of them historically? No. Is he almost? Yes. So he's not far off by old data standards.
Kirk, I just want to point out that this is a sandbag carry for Tyler Veerman, and he looked across for a moment right there, took a breath to see what looked like Hawk Call coming down the backside of that carry. Now, I could be mistaken. Call is already off and running, and Tyler Veerman is still on the sandbag carry. So whether that race is still up for grabs for first place, unclear, but it looks like Hawk Call has a very commanding lead still as he's working his way towards the base of that mountain.
So this is the last obstacle, that sandbag carry, before the real gauntlet starts. So Tyler is not halfway through the carry yet. Hawk is off the monkey bars, and the monkey bars signal the beginning of the gauntlet. You run a little bit from monkey bar to the next, run a little bit from monkey bar to, what would that be, bucket carry, and then Z-wall, and then from then on, it's gauntlet time. So we are about to see,
well, here's
is
Veerman.
Hawk going to have any issue at all?
Now, Veerman is descending right now. We don't know how far he is from the monkey bars, but let's say that it's been about 40 seconds so far. He was 250 behind at the start of the descent after Stairway to Sparta. And we have Steve
down the mountain. He accelerated down this. He's descended so incredibly well. And Hawkall is on the bucket carry just behind me. Here is his dad, super excited. The fact that his hobby, that his son has got almost a 3-minute lead. Tyler Veerman has just finished sandbags, and we can't see him in sight just yet. Is he home and dry? No. There is Hercloist, there is a difficult multi-rig, and there is a spear throw. There's about a mile left as I can see him coming down here. Super proud dad, super awesome son. Here we go.
Well, thanks again, Steve. And again, that is the end of the bucket carry for Hawk Call. We were asking, you said, Kirk, what are the chinks in his armor? What are the weaknesses potentially? And we said maybe heavy carries, but he's through those with still a very commanding lead, working his way into the final obstacle gauntlet. And again, this may just come down to, is he going to have any issues with spear throw? As now, okay, that's a time gap. We're looking at probably close to 3 minutes. Tyler Veerman, if that was him, coming out of the monkey bar. So that was Veerman. So again, with such a huge lead, he just has to make no mistakes right now. As you can see, that Hawk Call is in and out of Z-Wall with no problems. And Atkins is hunting now. He's hunting Veerman. He's within about 30 seconds of Veerman.
You just do not want this.
Yeah, Hammond.
You do not want that man on you towards the end of a race, because I don't know if anyone closes out or be the fastest in and out of everything from here on out.
Yeah, but let's
Veerman
talk
again,
about
with his
Mr.
circus
Tyler
background.
Veerman the last time he was in Utah. Tyler pounded home the last time he raced this venue to take his first podium position, take a third place. He was in a tight battle, and Veerman closed harder than anybody in his surroundings. So it's not to, Ryan Atkins has proven his closing ability time and time again, but I will say we haven't been able to have tight eyes on Veerman in a situation like this. And Veerman's not weak. Veerman's going to dig into this thing, right? And he does close well. So I think we have a worthwhile battle on our hands. Let's not submit quite yet, but Tyler's going to have to find another gear, I think.
And Josiah
100%.
Midow still in fourth position. I have not seen on him when this camera pans over. There's Rylan. So you're looking at what, maybe 20 seconds between them, and with obstacles still in the way, I would say I would not count Rylan out of that fourth position quite yet. But this is the story of the day right here. This is Hawk Call making his move in towards the finish.
Yeah, my biggest surprise is Rylan actually, I would say in loose quotes, fading back just a little bit into fifth position, given he's closed really well in the past. I think it's just a testament to how well everybody else is running up front as well.
And as much as I would like to see the rest of this race, what I really want to keep eyes on is Hawk Call right now, because we have two significant obstacles at the front. One is going to be the Herc hoist, and the other is the spear throw, and he's coming onto them right now. These are, for him, the two scariest remaining tasks. And I'd like to stay on Hawk Call if possible.
This is the interesting part here, because I went back and rewatched last year's Utah race. And Hawk's body language and his stride were really, really good until they weren't. Even coming off the spear throw, he hammered off the spear throw. And then suddenly the tire just knocked him dead. So if he gets these last two pulls here, there's really nothing else left here. Because he looked so good until
it looks like he had no problem.
He's still looking good. No, there's nothing left now.
Well, Hawk Call has definitely got it as he's headed towards the spear throw.
And he has a
and we'll be sure to toggle back over.
At this point, it's going to take it's even with a missed spear here for Hawk, which is coming up. That's going to be the biggest question mark. Hawk's going to have to lose this race now. He's going to have to try very hard to lose this race. Not that anything's ever locked up, because this is obstacle course racing, but man, he's worked really hard to get this gap to afford him the luxury of even a missed spear. And that's a powerful
thing. The story of this men's race is who's going to be second, who's going to be fifth. Because right now you have four men where really anyone theoretically could still finish in second position, but it really looks like a two-man race for second and a two-man race for fourth. And you're looking at a dive from Atkins to move within just a couple seconds of Veerman. And if you're Tyler Veerman, you are very scared right now as he's going over the A-frame.
You have cargo, Herc hoist, spear throw, rolling mud, dunk wall, helix, slip wall. There are a lot of transitional opportunities here. And these are probably the two best at the front of the pack at doing it. So I think it comes down to Herc hoist. That's the only differentiating factor here. And then spear throw is probably the longest obstacle or the shortest, depending on how you attack it. There could be a 10-second difference in how people throw their spear. And I can't wait to watch the technique on the hoist and on the spear.
Well, Hawk Call is already through helix, which means that he's here right at the end. It's spear throw now for Hawk Call, as you've got two men battling on Herc hoist. But this is the race for the win right now. What Hawk Call needs is to nail this spear throw. He gets this, he's going to claim his first victory in an Elite Series race. And this is a massive performance on his home course.
Ryan Atkins now has an 8 to 10 second gap.
Yeah, Atkins having gap Veerman. That's a stick from Hawk Call, and you're looking at the new winner, the new Utah champion, Hawk Call, taking this thing home to the finish line right now. Just a slip wall between him and victory.
Ryan Atkins moved past on that hoist and sprinted out of there. Tyler Veerman jogged out of it and stopped for water. Now, with 800 meters remaining in this course, if you're stopping for water, it's because you absolutely have to stop for water.
That's true. And what you're seeing right now is Hawk Call diving into the rolling mud. Just a couple more ascents for him and the slip wall in front. And this is the first victory of Hawk Call's career in a North American Elite Series race. The first of what we assume will be many. Taking after his father, he made that debut last year with his third place finish, and we said to ourselves, you know, we have a new star emerging. Right now, the question is, how good is this kid going to be?
I'd like
Yeah,
to
he
have a
didn't have
Hawk
his
cam
defining
and a
moment.
Hobie cam right now because I have a feeling we'd be
Yes.
getting some entertainment out of his father at this moment.
Yeah, Hobie is the ultimate hype man, and Hawk gets his defining moment right here. He gets his opportunity to finally say,
That gauntlet.
I'm living up to my hype.
There it is. Seal. Yeah, here comes. Got it.
And we've got Hawk Call back on screen. So he's got a little running stretch still to go to get to that finish line. And this is a big moment in the race because we've got Atkins and Veerman throwing spears. And Atkins
Stuck.
didn't make that same mistake this time. Atkins has nailed the spear. But what we need
The
is an update
mistake
on
of
Veerman.
having the target betray you.
I mean, Atkins has had many bad breaks with the spear throw before.
Now,
But
Tyler
this
missed his
man
spear
right
in
here,
San Luis
Hawk Call.
Obispo, so I'd be curious to see if he does it as well. Just because, once you miss a spear throw, it can get in your head a little bit, and I'd love to see, Tyler holding on there if he can, but that spear's in his way, so I'll be curious how that panned out.
Atkins doesn't look in any particular rush. Second place for him would be a phenomenal effort today. Help him move up that leaderboard significantly.
It's really, really early here to make any dramatic statements because we haven't yet heard from the other athletes how they feel they performed. But now Hawk is hurting here. But if he finishes with a 3-minute gap, this immediately goes down as one of the more impressive and dominant male victories we've seen at the national series level. We've seen a lot of women put up, not a lot of
Particularly
them.
as
We've
a
seen 2 women put up massive gaps, but we haven't seen a big dominant win like this in probably a year or so.
well, this man led wire to wire, and he's going to take it across the finish line as your Utah champion on the day. Hawk Call is no longer just the son of Hobie Call. Hawk Call is a champion of a North American Elite Series race. Today's win goes to Hawk Call in dominant wire-to-wire fashion. And that's a proud papa right there.
Congrats to that young man, huh? It's something we knew could happen. It really is. But to actually see it happen feels a little different now that I just watched it. It seems like a bigger exclamation point than I thought it would. How does it feel to you guys?
I didn't expect him to be so dominant the entire race. You just assumed at some point one of the other contenders would drag themselves into it and make it a bit of a dogfight. But he ran that race the way Hobie Call used to run races, which is flawlessly front running, just breaking the entire field. Everyone else was racing for second the entire day.
Well done. Very well done.
And
The
here's
last
second
time
place
we
right
saw
now.
the last time we saw somebody lead that first big climb and actually hold on to the win, I can't even tell you. Maybe one of Robert Killian's world championships back in 2016. In one of these big races, we don't see traditionally the person who has led that first climb hold on through the finish line. And we just watched it, almost like history in a sense, because with such an aggressive field, you rarely see that. So going wire to wire is very, very impressive because history proves that typically doesn't happen.
Now, I would like to point out as Ryan
the
Atkins
question,
runs in here for second place, not a huge gap, by the way, not a massive gap between them the way we expected it to be. The 3 minutes shrunk significantly.
it really did.
But go
And
on,
when
Bracken.
Ryan's hunting, time goes out the window with the leader when Ryan's hunting. He had such a group of prey in sight that he was just in all-out attack mode. But we expected Hawk to be able to lead and to be able to win, but would he fade towards the end? Well, I don't think anyone here expected was he would pull away towards the end. From miles 7 to 12, he put an extra minute on the field, and that, like you said, Kirk, is kind of shocking.
Mm-hmm.
It is, and like Tyler Veerman here is going to end up wrapping up a third place finish today, and very similar to a lot of other Veerman races where he goes out hard and he sputters a little at the end, but this time the man held it together. In third place is an amazing performance considering the field and the length of this race.
My guess is Tyler Veerman ran one of the most painful races out of all the racers out there. Going on, basically looking at he wasn't leading, right? And Hawk has that mojo going from leading. And then you have Tyler Veerman, who knows he's in second, looking at nobody the entire race with all that anxiety of guys behind you, only to get passed in the last little bit. I bet you Tyler Veerman went to the well to take that third place. He's not going to be disappointed with that effort. Not a chance.
No, he'll be very thrilled with that finish. I agree with you entirely. As you can see that this looks like Shadeg right now at the spear throw. And we had eyes on Rose Wetzel momentarily. I don't know where she is in relation to Alex Walker, Chris Rogloski, but it looks like Rose is still in second place. Third place coming through right now. Is that Rhea Coble?
Rose is doing exactly what we said we didn't think she would be able to do, which is put the ankle aside, attack a descent. She climbed with Rhea. If she is down at the bottom ahead of her, she climbed at least within range of Rhea and then out descended her. That is astonishing with that rolled ankle. I mean, all hats off to Rose for what she's doing, and Rhea's still in it. She's managed to hang on the descent as well.
Well, and we know that the spear throw lurking, this could really go to either of them. And we also know, and I'd like to add, this is important, Rose, even if she does not miss the spear, often takes 30 to 40 seconds to throw it. She really takes her time. And the lead that she has right now is not safe as a result of that.
That's exactly
And
right.
I have a feeling
she
that
has the longest build up to a spear throw.
And I have a feeling that I mentioned earlier about Alex Walker taking care of business, right? She goes on course, she takes care of business. I have to imagine we're going to have eyes on her soon. And with this gauntlet coming up, we got some failable things. So is first through third on lock? Not quite yet. Not in my opinion, anyways. There's still some shakeup that could happen.
Well, Jack Bauer's out on the course with an update for us. And what do you got, Jack? We have some technical difficulties with Jack, so we'll come back to Jack with an update shortly. But right now, we have some athletes coming into the spear throw, it looks like.
Now, David, I could be wrong, but over Steve's shoulder for a second, I thought I saw Nick Mask run onto screen, and we haven't seen him. We haven't seen the Marks. We haven't seen Nick. We haven't seen a lot of our contenders. Is that Sean Stevens Whale, I believe, misses a spear throw here and heads off
who
to
that
burpees.
was, missing that
Rylan,
spear.
we saw miss burpees.
And here's Chris Rogloski, fourth position, it appears right now, and still running like very strong and smooth as she comes out of that crawl. But she's got quite a gap between herself and the two women in front. As mentioned before, that spear could still shake things up, but as it stands, it would take a miss there for her to steal one of those podium spots.
Sharing battle stories after the race is over. It's not much better than that.
So Chris Rogloski, again, looking very strong at this point in the race. She just continues to impress me with how she has no major weaknesses in her game. Every event she seems to be competitive in some way. As Rylan Shadeg now making his way in towards the finish for either a fourth or fifth place finish. I did not see what happened to Josiah. Did you guys?
No, I had no eyes on that. And the interesting thing, or maybe important thing to keep in mind about Chris, is that she's now lived at altitude for about 2.5 months. And that's about
so it's starting to take effect.
4 years less than Rhea and Rose. So she's battling two women who have about a half-decade lead on the altitude game.
Well, one last little ascent for Chris Rogloski, who not only has been competitive in these races this year, including a third place finish in Big Bear, but also managed to steal High Rocks World Championship while she was at it.
And it looks like we did have Josiah Midow there after past the finish line talking with the guys. So we just must not have had eyes on him somewhere in front of Ryland, but not sure on the placing there.
And I
So
could be
Josiah
wrong, but
Midow
it
with a
looked
fourth
like we
place
saw
finish.
someone in all gray go through the monkey bars there, which may be VJ Jones.
But VJ still maybe squeezing a few points out of this race. That's pretty incredible. But Ryland Shadegg looking completely depleted at this point.
And we just saw Botras hop off the monkey bars with, I believe that was a clinker right behind him. I think that was Jacob Clinker. So we have a whole host of people mixing together that we may not have expected to see together on course. VJ, Botras, Clinker.
I want to describe that feeling that we just had a shot of Ryland there doing what you call like the zombie death march to finish the race as he hones in there. That feeling has to be one of the absolute most satisfying yet worst feelings in endurance athletics. You are telling your body to do something it physiologically can't do anymore. I don't even remember that portion of the race often because you're in such disarray. Like, he'll look back on this and the only thing he'll remember is because we have video proof. I almost guarantee it because his heart rate is so high. He's maxed out. He's been through lactate threshold way longer than he should have. And he's on damage control right now. And most people finishing that didn't win the race are at that point right now. Every fiber in his body is telling him to stop. The only thing that's keeping him going in his mind right now.
What's really incredible about this is he really is on empty. He can barely pick his knees up at this point. It almost seems like he's more of a stumble than a run. But that is the slip wall for Ryland Shadegg. And he is being chased right now. He's got to hold off a sprinter. One last kick from Shadegg. Who just made a move on him right there? That was Joshua Reed sneaking up to the 6th position, just out of nowhere. All day we don't see him. Very similar to his performance in Tahoe at the North American Championships. Closing late like that.
Heat doesn't kill you until it does. One of those pieces that opens up the door for heat to just assassinate you is 30 burpees in the sun at the end of a really long race, where Ryland went from hurting to decimated with one missed spear. You could see it when he missed it. He bent his head down over the railing and just looked absolutely destroyed. And then the burpees finished that off.
Well, right now you got Chris Rogloski. Eyes on her right now, pushing towards the finish. But the question is, where are our leading women? Emma Cook-Clark.
Well, that's a great question because
the women in a while.
Women only start roughly about 5 minutes after the men. And if finishing gauntlet here now, because we predict her maybe to be in the top 10 or 15 of the overall men time. So she got to be getting close.
Well, I believe our rabbits are about to have eyes on some of the women coming into the festival area. At least your Emma Cook-Clark, Rose Wetzel, and Rhea Coble.
I think we
have
on
this descent right now, and you can see just how long this descent is.
Oh, a bad ankle roll there, unless that was a rock rolling out for Chris Rogloski. Got caught on camera there.
She's doing pretty well.
Yeah.
She's looking pretty solid still.
So
and as Chris makes her way to the finish again, I was pointing out the length of this descent. What was that, Bracken?
Second and third, Rhea and Rose, I believe, are on a carry at the same time right here. They're going to finish up a carry and head down by the tape past us. And I believe that they are still relatively close to each other.
Well, here's Emma Cook-Clark, your women's race leader. And again, we spoke about wire-to-wire. This is an incredible wire-to-wire performance. And you just have to hope for her. Lost because of a missed spear throw. We saw the failed obstacle in Abu Dhabi that cost her a second-place finish at the World Championships. And instead, she had Emma Cook-Clark looks like she has enough of a cushion that she could even handle a mistake or two.
Emma's in that phase of racing
And if there
where
was someone who was going
her
to
legs
win
have
this
always
race,
done the
right?
talking. Yeah, her legs have always done the talking, but she, in the beginning and even now still, you know, if we have perfect course conditions, we're gaining confidence in Emma's obstacle ability. And today, although the heat is there and the grueling course is there, the conditions are very dry, very tacky, very sticky on the obstacles, which leads to very low obstacle failure. So there wasn't much on paper that could get in her way today, considering the course conditions. I think she's probably in between making that jump when we see like a wet, mushy course, where then we might see some failures out of her. But today, like if you look at the specs, it had Emma written all over it.
And Emma Cook Clark, again, if there's anyone who was going to add their name to the list of racers winning North American Elite Series races, U.S. Championship Series, National Series races, whatever the title of that series may be, we have not had one that was not named Nicole Miracle or Lindsay Webster in 1,500 days. It should be Emma Cook Clark. When we look at what her talent level is, where she's been finishing in races for the last year, she is the one athlete that is truly at that level, in that echelon where she could take down a Lindsay Webster at any given time.
Two things
Bracken,
to point out, one on screen, one off.
You'd said. Oh, you're going to say exactly what I was going to say, Bracken, so you just go and say it.
I'm not sure, but I know this delay here is killing us, Kirk, you and I. But Emma has the opportunity to coast this race out. She had no reason to run that bucket, and she is. That's not a decision that many people have at this point. She's over 2 hours into a race, and she's deciding to run with the bucket up and downhill, which is spectacular. The second is that Chris Rogloski is off cam, but we can see her, and she is doing a hop consistently down this mountain where every single time she plants her left leg first, it's always the same gallop. And that's what you do when you have an ankle sprain. You have to quick get your bad ankle onto the ground and then take the brunt of it with your other ankle. So we have two women now in the top four dealing with a bum ankle going down the mountain.
And our rabbit,
exactly
of course,
right.
Robert Killian. This is
And I don't know if you guys heard,
viewers
heard this, but one of the camera guys, he snuck in his audio and it said, "I'll limp down the course with you." You could hear the audio, and we were following Chris. Don't know if you caught that or not. So it sounds like indeed Bracken, those couple of spills or trips got her ankle, because the cameraman audibly, I believe it was on Chris when I heard the audio come in, say, "I'll limp down the hill with you." But right now, seems to be hanging in there.
I'm good. Well, they got me on.
Yeah, she's holding it together, but we've seen a number of limps out of Chris Rogloski right now. Her power isn't there on the foot to ground power. Not the way you see Emma Cook Clark running this flat right now, even with all the grass and stuff in her way and the odd terrain. She's still running faster than Rogloski is on this harder packed descent. And that tells you how Chris is feeling right now.
And you heard the rabbit there. Steve called out to him something, and it was Killian responded, "No, I'm good. They have me on right now." So Steve was even offering to take the camera so that he could run because of how bad Killian's ankle. Right.
Really hard, especially.
Is by a good bit. You're one of the OGs, Bracken. You'd blow the field away, embarrass them. Now, at this point in the race, if you put your mind, your mind in Emma's body here, like, what are you thinking at this point in a race? If you're Emma Cook Clark and you're clear of the field, like, what are you enjoying it? Are you still pressing? Like, what's going through her head, do you think?
If she was anything like me back in the day, when she's out of sight in the woods, coming up to the last gauntlet, you catch your breath and then you try to put on a show in the last quarter mile. So she's pressing now because if you want to win, you want to win looking good. That's why you saw her bounding down the hill, running hard in and out of these obstacles. She's putting her statement on this victory.
And I want to ask you guys, we have not seen second and third for quite a while. So my question to you is, when they emerge, Who do you anticipate is going to be in the lead there, Rose Wetzel or Rhea Coble? Because they were essentially deadlocked once again, as they have been for half the race.
Well, honestly, I think Jack Bauer has some eyes on here. If we could go over to him, he's got something to tell us.
We don't have audio with Jack, unfortunately. But
what he's saying
we
right
can get
now
eyes on the
is that
camera or on the athletes.
Rhea and Rose are right there, and I believe Rhea is still ahead of Rose, coming off of
It looks
rope
like
climb.
they're both on the rope climb at the same time, if that was correct.
Jack, give us a thumbs up if Rhea is ahead of Rose. That must thumbs down.
Oh,
There we have it, fellas. Easy answer.
so
Give
Rose
us
is
a
ahead of Rhea.
thumbs up
So
if Chris is in sight.
we're just gonna have to wait and see, guys, because right now Emma Cook Clark is putting her stamp on this thing. She is really stretching out that lead. She is the only racer left in the field that is truly attacking this final section of the course. It looked like Rose Wetzel was just kind of hanging on for dear life the last time we saw her. And that's what a course like this does to you, is even the descents are exhausting because of how steep and technical they are.
Who wouldn't hang on for dear life at the end of a course like this? This course is brutal. Now they're dealing with 80, 85-degree heat blowing on them. They've been out there forever. Even saw Emma Cook Clark on both of the last water stations. She stopped and took her time. I mean, those are 2 water stations in 10 minutes, and she took her time to drink.
We are now looking at Rose Wetzel descending and now ascending with that sandbag. And right behind her, that's Rhea Coble. So we are still deadlocked. And while it did appear that on the rope climb itself, Rose was slightly behind, she comes off of obstacles so quickly. We've seen that over and over. Her ability to just get back up to speed because she's got those snappy track legs. Rhea's, of course, you know, that little locomotive. She has to slowly get those wheels going again. She doesn't have that acceleration. But still, look at the two of them,
absolutely right.
seconds apart.
And Rose is so strong out of obstacles. So Rhea's chance to win this is to get into every obstacle with no hesitation. And really, she's got to get that spear throw out of her hands quickly. You usually don't want to rush something like that, but Rose is going to spot you 15 to 20 seconds, and you can push that lead.
And we just saw, speaking of spears, that's a hit from Emma Cook Clark. It was high and right, but it stuck. And now look at the two of these two. Again, watch that stretch away from Rose Wetzel, just that ability to gap instantaneously because she gets up to speed so quickly. And Rhea Coble's going to have to do something that she's not accustomed to doing, and that's pressing the downhill, and that's just being willing to send it and use it, because the longer she can stay on Rose, the better her chances.
Do we think that the
There's
technicality
no more
of these
rhythm running.
descents favor Rhea Coble, or at least help her a little bit? Because I think on the open descents, we're not as confident in Rhea's ability to descend with some of the best. But right now, she's hanging tough with Rose. Do you think the technicality of some of the parts of this course, as we saw, like Chris Rogloski roll her ankle, you think that's helped Rhea descend, Bracken?
Yeah,
right now,
I
look
think
at
it's
her. She just
slowing
ran her
Rose
right
because you
back
can see
down
her
into it.
limping.
Rhea's
It looks like
running
Rose
right
is
back
limping
into
again
it.
on that descent.
They're fighting, though. This is a fight. These women have not backed off each other for 2 hours.
And what we're
And Rhea
seeing,
Coble
is that a
clearly
testament
more
to
comfortable on the
Rose's
descent.
ankle? Or is that a testament
I would
to
say that that's
Rhea's
100%
aggressiveness on the
Rose's
descent?
ankle. That we've now seen Rose limping for the entirety of this descent. She has not been able to open her stride. She's doing that little half-step hop for the entirety of this descent. Her best shot is to get to the flat where she can put significant gap between herself and Rhea. But Rhea isn't even running particularly hard on the downhill. She's just allowed to just fall forward. She doesn't have that limitation that Rose has right now.
If I'm descending and I'm descending like Rhea and I'm actually passing people like significantly, that's a big momentum shift in my eyes for Rhea. I would go
Oh
into
yeah.
this gauntlet with a lot of confidence, because running away from people at this stage of the race, knowing you're in second place, momentum is everything. You know those little sparks that fuel you and give you a second surge of energy that you didn't know is there? Rhea Coble has that going into this gauntlet because of her ability to put some time on Rose there due to the ankle. So I kind of like how Rhea is sitting here. Even if Rose is faster on the flats, technically, I think Rhea's been ignited a little bit by that pass. I would be if I were in her shoes.
Absolutely, and that's a significant gap. It's nothing to scoff at. I just got an update that in the men's race, final finishing position, BJ Jones is in 11th position at the finish line. So, not the day he hoped for, I'm sure, but VJ Jones has finished the race, and he's going to hope that he doesn't need to use those points in his series rankings.
Well, Rhea Coble now has an entire obstacle lead on Rose, and Rose isn't making up time on this section of the monkey bars yet. Now Rhea's off running free and clear, just lengthening the time. We need to see Rose get off an attack here. She lost a little bit of step there. This is looking like it's Rhea's to lose at this point.
It
And
is.
look
It
at
is
this.
absolutely looking like a Rhea race right now. But that's
What?
Rogloski now in the race again, and you have two women on bum ankles competing for that third podium position. As Emma Cook Clark has just crossed the finish line and claimed the victory. Emma Cook Clark, first place. We now have a new name to add to the record books of winners of North American Elite Series races. And Emma Cook Clark, you are on that list. Congratulations to you. As now the big battle is the bucket carry. Rhea Coble, Rose Wetzel, and Chris Rogloski, all three with a chance for second place. I don't know how Rogloski did it, but she is right there again.
You know, about an hour ago, I said, Chris, I'm just going to say it now. Chris is going to get to the bottom in second. And then about a half hour ago, I realized I'm an absolute fool. She's out of this race. And now here she is again, about to make a pass into third place. And she still has a chance to take second today. This is outrageous racing.
And I think Rose Wetzel is having clearly an issue with that ankle again because she is no longer pressing the way that she was even just a few minutes ago.
There's no fault to Rose here at all. I think she's at the point in the race now where the effort is catching up with her and she's dealing with the ankle. When you start to see how slow she was going, like how much time even Rhea put on her in transitions in and out of like the monkey bars, for example, that screams to me, that doesn't scream to me ankle as much as it screams to me like I'm bleeding out right now and I'm hurting. And so I think that you're kind of getting the perfect storm, as you should at this point in a race if you've raced it hard. And so I think you probably got a little bit of that going on.
Yeah, for sure. And it's important to remember that when you have an ankle or something that's in your lower half that's giving you issues, it's not just about limping. Everything around it has to tighten up and take extra strain onto it. And you add in a 13-mile course with thousands of feet of vert at altitude with heat, like we've drummed into your head all day long. Those other muscle groups and stabilizers really can't afford to do all this extra work. And it just leads to running out of gas sooner than you normally would because you can't possibly be efficient when you're trying to brace your leg and limp.
Well, right here, Rhea Coble still in second position. She's made the blind corner. Wait. Still looking very smooth as she hits the Atlas Stone. Now, who's going to be next? Is it going to be Chris Rogloski? I see Rose Wetzel just hitting the Z-wall right now.
And Chris
I have
is
to
around
imagine
the
an
blind
ankle
corner.
doesn't do any favors to either of those athletes on the Z-wall. That can be a lot of torque on the ankles, but they both look clean.
Well, Rhea Coble's got a little gap here, and she's going to need it. She's going to need to get lucky, I think, at least with some maybe a little help on the spear throw, because that is coming up, and we know what that does to the women's races and historically.
Rhea's running with purpose right now. This is probably the most open we've seen her stride. So she's aware of what's happening behind her. And keep in mind, anyone watching at home, that these volunteers and course officials are giving people updates. The entire time that Tyler Veerman was in second place, it wasn't just, oh, I hope I can catch first. It was, he's got a 90-second lead on you. He has a 2-minute lead. It's 2.5 minutes. It's 2:50. He's getting those updates, and it's negatively impacting his adrenaline. Rhea and Chris are both having those same updates. They know what's happening, and so Chris is feeding off it, but Rhea's at least aware that her lead is shrinking.
Not that we
Now, I
play the
wanted to
game
say,
of what if.
noting
But-
Rose Wetzel's ankle right now, it is clear that her ankle is causing huge problems for her right now. Like, if we talked about Tyler Veerman running the most painful race of the day, but I think that now goes to Rose Wetzel, who is looking like she's in absolute agony on every step at this point.
Not that we like to play the game of what if, but I'm going to play the game of what if. You know, it's been a few years since we've seen Rhea Coble at the front end of this women's field in these competitive races. She's had other endeavors. She's been pursuing like skimo and some other types of racing. But what if Emma Cook Clark wasn't in this race, guys? Like, think about the implications. Like, we're starting to see maybe like Rhea Coble of old sort of come back as she's gone through her health journey and then pursuing other sort of loves in sport. But to see this out of Rhea Coble is pretty satisfying, considering I've kind of, you know, witnessed her journey over the last like 5 or 6 years. Like, this is sort of a statement piece, fellas. I don't know what you think, but it's pretty impactful in my mind as far as Rhea's prowess.
Oh, there's no question. And it's great to see her beginning to reestablish herself, but I think a lot of that is just confidence. We haven't seen her attacking a course like this in probably 3 or 4 years.
And at the same time, what does it say about Rose Wetzel? If we think back to when Rhea was at her best, the type of mountain beast that she is and was, we never in a prediction show would have said, and I think Rose is going to challenge her on this 2.5-hour altitude mountain course. That wasn't even in the cards. That wasn't a possibility. And yet here it is. With a bad ankle, Rose made it 12.5 of 13 miles with her.
And it's not over yet, is the other thing. I mean, this is Chris Rogloski is saying it's not over either, and she is clearly limping as well. Like, she is not running with that open stride that we normally see from her. It looks like her hamstrings are tightening up on her a bit as well, but she is so tough. This is all grit at this point. If you had to say which of these athletes feels the best right now, you'd say Rhea, correct?
Well, Emma Cook Clark is already, you know, 2 Gatorades deep, so she's probably feeling pretty good right now. But other than her, I'm going to say Rhea Coble right now. She's got the momentum on her side, and she's only been picking her way up through the field. And then I would say second would have to be Chris going on the hunt. But it's pretty close between those two. They both have a lot to fight for right now.
They do, and this is such a great battle because Rhea is known as currently the best ultra OCR athlete on the planet. And no one runs more 100 milers than Chris Rogloski. So you have 2 women who don't fade, but they're both at the end of a really hard, tough race, and they have some things plaguing them. So both women have been in more brutal spots than this. So you can't really bank on either of them having this, oh, I'm just too tired, I don't know how to deal with this. They've done this for 24 hours. It really is going to come down to someone's going to have to capitalize on an obstacle, because in between on the flats, they seem to be too well matched.
Well, Bracken, it's interesting you say that because we are at the spear throw right now, and there's really only about 10 to 15 seconds between these two athletes.
The window if she can stick this.
I'll be honest, I missed both of those throws, guys. I lost my visual for a moment, and I have it back, and it looks like Rose Wetzel is just stuck. Is she about to steal this?
She is.
That was the quickest I've seen Rose Wetzel throw a spear in recent history, too.
ankle, spear
Well,
throw
it's not
taking a
over
minute.
yet,
Much ado
Rose. You
about
still got
nothing.
quite a ways to run. But wow, what a performance right now. What an opportunity. The door is open for you. Can she push that pain aside?
I
She
think at this
can.
point that pain has numbed itself out, right, Bracken?
There is no greater pain reducer on the planet than sticking a spear throw as your opponents are doing burpees. I've competed in a lot of different sports, Kirk, and never once in my life have I had a mind and body numbing adrenaline rush like nailing a spear to seal a victory. It's just outrageous that she's done that. She
Wow.
kept herself in it.
Well, Rose, she's going to have to battle home now. But that limp seems to be slightly gone. You can see Rhea Cobal's now on the hunt again. And it's
It's so
not
hard to
that
run
big a gap.
fast
I mean, we're
after
probably talking
burpees.
30, 40 seconds.
So hard to run fast
Yeah.
after burpees. You have what burpees did to you versus a bad ankle. Like, which one's worse? I don't know. But right
Well,
now we're going to find
Rhea
out.
looks fast. Rhea looked fast in that first clip we saw of her. And she's into the
So does
mud. And
Chris.
that's Chris Rogloski also looking smooth.
Oh, this is so brutal. Rolling mud is
This is such a
not an
close
obstacle, and yet it is so miserable when you're trashed, because it's like being in a bad dream where there's something right ahead of you,
You
and
just
or
can't get
something
out.
chasing you, and you can't move fast enough.
Well, if
Why
we
is
cut
that?
over
That
right
looks
now
incredibly
to Rose Wetzel, she is moving fast. Rose Wetzel is hammering right now. This is her opportunity. I think she just passed Hobie Cole right there. That was an OG high five. And Rose Wetzel now, one last little ascent. She looks like she's in so much pain. She's using her arms to try and run this thing home.
Yeah, but
Yeah,
if you
you
remember how the
rarely in
gentleman looked
OCR.
running up this hill, she's running as strong now. She's running on gusto now.
This is the track in her coming out. You rarely in OCR see someone go to their arms to finish off a race, but she is absolutely thrashing away with her upper body. And every single one of these three women had the opportunity to put their stamp on the race and have their narrative be the story. Rhea was either back with a runner-up finish, or Chris gets back-to-back finishes, or Rose is back with a runner-up finish. They all had that chance. And Rose is the one in the driver's seat now, but look at her fight. She's almost power walking.
Now, I want to point out as well, again, second place gets $2,000. Third place gets $1,000. Fourth place gets $800. So a miss there for Chris Rogloski may have cost herself $1,200. One spear throw.
You see Rhea checking back constantly now. You know what that's a sign of, boys, don't you? That's a sign those legs
She's
are
hurting.
blown up, and she is on borrowed time, Rhea. Hang on, girl.
She's had two glances back so far that I have seen. So she wants to know, can I take my foot off the gas just a little bit? Just a little bit. But the answer is no, Rhea, you can't. You got to keep pressing right now.
Big Bear
It's
and
not
Utah
over.
are the two cruelest courses, because you do all of this climbing, all this descending, you get back down to the festival grounds, and then they loop you up and around it one time, and you have this little tiny incline of vert that you discard before the race as it even being a thing. You just think, I get to the bottom and I kick to the finish, and suddenly you're reduced to this stumble crawl hike at a grade that any other time in your life you'd just be running on. It's so unfair and brutal.
Well, right now it looks like we have Rose Wetzel sighting. Rose Wetzel, if we can get to that shot, may have just reached the finish line. And it looks like Rose Wetzel's going to hold on for second place. What an absolutely thrilling finish for Rose Wetzel to steal this race. And now, as she hits the slip wall, can Rhea Coble finish this thing out? It's dry. It shouldn't be slippery at all. And just moments ahead of Chris Rogloski, and a great effort from Chris. But Rhea Coble is going to hold on for third place here in Utah for the Spartan Elite Series. Completely gassed. She looked back 3 or 4 times towards the end of that race. What a showing. And who would have thought, like you said, Bracken, that we'd see Rose Wetzel and Rhea Coble on the same podium of a 2.5-hour mountain race?
In our episode this week, Kirk, we talked about who runs the most painful race. And we usually say second place or fourth place. Well, today the answer is all three of these women ran the most painful race. Rhea, Rose, Chris, they went to a place that the average human being doesn't get the opportunity or the misfortune to ever experience. And they are not going to forget this battle for the rest of their lives.
I know.
Any one of them, had they been a minute apart, 2 minutes back from each other, would never have experienced the level of misery that they experienced battling each other for the last 2 hours.
It feels like the old guard sort of have made their mark here. The old guard like put their feet back down on the ground. I mean, of course, we have Emma Cook-Clark winning the women's race. But, you know, as a 39-year-old man myself, I got to give a fist bump, right? To Rhea Coble and Rose Wetzel. Old guard, still relevant.
Absolutely.
That's cool.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And we have Steve Hammond right now heading down to go chat with some of our race winners. Steve, who do you got with you?
20 minutes, half an hour.
Well, guys, thanks. We are live with the girls. Holy smokes, I'm going to start with Emma Cook-Clark. Emma, you had a phenomenal race. You've just done a couple of sky races, mountain courses. How did this compare with that?
I mean, in some ways it was similar. There was a lot of climbing and descending. It was hot, so that was like the challenge as well as the elevation here. So, yeah, I mean, it wasn't super different, but the obstacles certainly change it. And just the amount of running versus vertical.
And most of all, you didn't stop smiling at you. You loved it, didn't you?
Most of the time, I loved it. Yeah, it was tremendous.
Congratulations, Emma Cook-Clark, you're women's champion. But holy smokes, you ladies gave us an absolute show. That was incredible. Rose, you had no idea that you were in second place when you hit the spear.
So Ray and I went back and forth for second for a lot of the race. And then at the very end, we see Chris creeping up on us, which is not surprising at all because her endurance is amazing. But yeah, I know Ray is strong in every capacity, so she kept me honest the whole time. I know even when I pulled ahead at some point, I was like, I know she's on me, and there's no way she's giving up.
Well, guys, your top four right here. That was an incredible race, ladies. You are amazing. Well done out there on a brutal, brutal course. Thank you very much. Back to you guys.
How much did Emma win by?
I'm not sure.
Thanks, Steve.
A wee bit.
Congratulations
13
to
minutes.
Chris for her fourth place finish, and Rhea for third, Rose on her second place podium finish. And it's incredible how close together they were at the end. It all coming down to a spear, of course. But we're going to kind of recap a little bit. I'd like to talk about what I found so interesting about today was how similar the men's and the women's races really played out. You had one wire-to-wire winner who streaked away, and then you basically had 3 to 4 athletes who just leapfrogged each other back and forth for the entire race to the point that we had no idea who would finish second and who would finish fifth in either of those races because it could have been a complete shuffle. And if you were to play that race over 3 or 4 times, you'd have 3 or 4 different finishing orders. So, Bracken, parting thoughts about how things shook out today. Let's start with the men's race.
Well, we talked about dominance, right? We talked about how the winners of both races were dominant. Hawk Call crested the top with about a 3-minute lead. He won by 1 minute and 36 seconds. Emma Cook-Clark won by 13 minutes and 21 seconds. So I know we're talking about the men right now, but while there were dominant wins on either side, there are levels to dominance. And maybe the men's field was arguably deeper with world champions not winning. We didn't have another world champion in the mix unless you count Rhea as an ultra world champion, which I think you can. But 1 minute and 36 seconds by Hawk Call and still looked dominant doing it.
He did. And I would add, let's pull up the men's leaderboard because Hawk Call was the only man who cracked 2 hours today. And he, an hour, 59 and 14 seconds. So he beat Atkins by, like you said, about minute 36. And then to Veerman, it was less than a minute back. And then the gap started forming. Josiah Middow was almost 4 minutes back from Tyler Veerman after being right up against him going into the final descent. Rylan Shadeg, another 3 minutes back to him. He just squeaked it out over Josh Reed. And then again, you're looking at another minute back to Sean Stephen Wales, almost another minute back to Batriss, another 4 minutes back to Brett Hales, another 3.5 minutes back to Nick Matz. So these gaps, when you talk about the length of this race and how steep the climbs and descents are, you get these opportunities for these massive spreads to happen. And I think you're 100% right, Bracken, when you talk about how we did not have the champions, the world champions in this field to challenge Emma Cook-Clark, but certainly the women's depth was on display when you look at positions 2, 3, 4, 5. We got one amazing show for both the men's and women. So, Kirk, what are your thoughts?
Well, it's a brutal race when you see time gaps between 1 and 10 on the men's side be 19 minutes. We have a pretty deep field out there, and we have a lot of talent. Emma Cook-Clark on the women's side, she's the exception, not the rule. That's how talented she is. But on the men's side, seeing those time gaps just tells us exactly what we thought. History repeated itself in the sense that Utah delivered with the conditions, with the duration. You see these big gaps form as people fall apart. When they fall apart, they crumble. And that's why we see these big time gaps. And I would like to say, when you look at this, I would say my MVP on this list of men, I know the North American champs, Joshua Reed, had a great race, but it was a diluted field. This year's a pretty stacked field, and Joshua Reed comes in 6th place. He's one that stands out to me, as well as, of course, Hawk Call winning and putting his exclamation point on the men's race.
Absolutely. And we've got now our top 4 women in because we have on the leaderboard, we're going to throw it up there. We have not had another women's finisher yet that we're aware of. And again, you look at that 13-minute gap from Emma Cook-Clark back to the rest of the field, but then those other 3 racers all within 60 seconds of one another. And that is, you're talking about a 2 hours and 35 minutes of running, and it's 60 seconds separating 3 people. That is unbelievable. As here we get an Alex Walker sighting, and Alex Walker is hurting today. This is a tough day. She is all business. So this is a painful way to run for 5th, huh?
Just brutal. And heat, altitude, well, they won out. Because Alex is not a quitter, and she hasn't quit. And she is a fit athlete who I would argue is as fit as she's been. And we've seen her top 5 at the Tahoe World Championships. But this is just a brutal beatdown of a course on a hot, hot day.
Well, we always say Utah in July, not going to be a cool day. Alex Walker is tough. She has managed to put herself in top 5 podium contention in National Series races at almost every event she's run. And here she is again doing just that. It's not her prettiest race, but they rarely are when they're out in the mountains. Alex Walker is going to be really proud of her performance today. Whether or not she's pleased with 5th place, she looks very tender right now coming to the finish.
There's that famous phrase, Kirk, you've mentioned it on the podcast before, you win or you learn. I think that these women here, 2nd through 5th, they went to school today. They learned a lot that they're going to use moving forward in Blue Mountain, in Kelowna, and probably in Dubai or in Abu Dhabi this year. This was a learning experience, both about how to race in this and also about who they are when the chips are down, because the chips got down for everyone 2nd through 5 today.
Yeah, I got what I wanted today. I wanted today in the sense that, never mind. We got an interview coming with Hawk Call.
Yeah, might as well take this.
Hey guys, I have today's winner, the quite awesome Hawk Call on your home course here in Utah. You did this race last year and you went right out of the gate, and but you came back this year and you went even harder, which was surprised me because you crashed last year. However, what does this mean to you, Mr. Hawk Call?
Oh, I
Save your thumbs on the camera.
Happy with this. Yeah, I'm beyond happy with this. After last year, I was like, all right, the finishing, for one, doesn't have a tire flip, so I'm not going to pass out, basically. I was like, and for two, I'm a lot stronger than I was last year. I was like, I've been working on this. And so going into this one, I was like, I'm going to take out even harder, and I'm going to make that gap as big as I possibly can going into that last descent. And I was like, and this time, no matter what, I'm not going to let Atkins pass me. And every single steep hill I got to, I was like, this is the one. I was like, this is when he's going to catch me. And I was like, just go, just go, just go.
How you feeling about the races?
Prior to this race, I said that this was the venue that I was most excited for so far this year. And like you, I am satisfied. We got a dominant blowout by Emma. We saw who she can be. We saw such a redemption story for Hawk Call. And then we saw nothing but brutal back and forth battles, second through on our viewfinder, fifth. It was everything a race fan, a commentator, just a believer in the sport of OCR wants to see out of a North American spotlight race.
It really was. And I'd like to add that it felt like a fitting sequel to last year's race at this venue, where you really got to start to tell this narrative, especially on the Hawk Call story, to then have this essentially exactly sequel come back through where he has his second shot to do the exact same thing. It's almost like playing the story right over again, except this time we have a different finish. And you couldn't be happier for that guy, of course, and also for Rose Wetzel, for Rhea Coble to have their opportunities to really star today, to get those podium spots that, the door was open, as we said in the beginning, and they walked through it.
Yeah, and what this also gives us is it gives us some big stake at hands moving forward. We've created legitimate battles in the point series based on the men's finish, definitely with VJ Jones finishing back and Atkins finishing up in second. Emma stealing a bunch of points on the women's side, and then the back and forth between like Rose, Chris, Rhea, Alex. It just means there's going to be big stakes at the next one too. Everybody showed up and kind of took care of business today for the most part, but it means there's no shoe-in yet to who wins, and I like that.
Well, so if we look at the women's overall leaderboard, and we don't have the updated scores yet, but coming into today, Lindsay Webster was the outright leader, of course. But if you look into positions from there, it was Chris Verglosky second, Alex Walker third, Rose Wetzel fourth, and Rhea Coble sitting in eighth, with Emma Cook Clark in fifth. You're going to see a huge jump from Emma Cook Clark up the leaderboard. You're going to see a massive jump from Rose Wetzel from fourth, possibly to third, or even second, depending. And Rhea Coble is going to make a move up the leaderboard from eighth. All of a sudden, the women's field, it's anybody's game going into the final race. And this last race is really going to matter.
You guys summed it up great. But before we look ahead, as a fan of the sport, can I just say that it gave me goosebumps watching Hawk Call get interviewed? I know he's his own man, and I don't want to overplay the Hobie Call card, but man, that was watching Hobie. His voice, his inflections, his personality, that was watching Hobie. And Hobie was the dominant force for 7-8 years in this sport. This might just be chapter 2. You talked about this was the sequel to Utah. This might just be the sequel of the early 2010s.
It's distinctly possible, and if that's the case, I think everybody has a lot to be worried about, because Hobie Call, the one thing that works against him is that his true dominance was before this sport reached its absolute peak. But even when it did, when he came out and raced, he was still Hobie Call, just like we remembered him. And if you have now a version of him who's only in his early 20s, everybody's in big trouble, because this guy's going to be around for the next 10, 15 years.
Yeah, and I think we hope to see, these up and comers with longevity potential in this sport. A lot of times athletes find the sport in their 30s or their late 20s, early 30s, after they've maybe checked the boxes of other endurance sports, and then they stumble upon this one. We got some legitimate young humans out here crushing it. on both sides. Like, we've been asking for new blood. Well, I think we have it now. And I think it's being repeated time and time again through these series races this year. Again, today was no surprise. We have young blood on both sides. So I like what this means for the future. The old guard or the old dogs don't have this thing on wrap. And have they ever? I don't know. It's just going to be very fun to watch play out.
Now, for those of you guys at home, we want to thank you first and foremost for joining us for this opportunity to bring back Spartan Race live broadcast. It's our first time doing this in years, so thank you all for being patient with us as we've tested new software, new hardware, and a new means of going back and covering this race for you. We hope that you've been able to enjoy this presentation. I've had a great time working with you once again, Bracken and Kirk. So thank you all, as well as big thanks to Steve Hammond, the trail master himself, and Jack Bauer, the king of stats, out on the course, helping to provide us with those live updates. Thank you to Jason Dupree for producing today, and to Will Hicks and the OCR report, and to Spartan Race. Thank you all again. We will see you guys in Kelowna for the North American Championship Beast, August 27th, and then we'll wrap up coverage of the North American Series, Elite Series, in October. So see you all then in August.